But Yunsel, that's the name his grandfather gave him when he found him abandoned in a snow-covered field, and he also learned to be an undertaker from him since his grandfather was an undertaker too. One night, when Yunsel thought his grandfather and he were only going to play, he didn't know that would be the last time he would be with him, because he found him with no eyes and both arms cut off, just a moment ago. His grandfather had met a mysterious man, and the mysterious man called him Demonic Blade Bujanyang, claiming he betrayed the clan by leaving, and that the only place he now belongs is hell. Now, listening to his grandfather, he hears his last wish before dying, not to take revenge, and to live a happy life. Well, that's not how the story is supposed to go. This time, Unsel can't grant his grandfather's wish. Examining his grandfather's body, his arms were definitely cut off at the same time. The technique that was used was a downward slice, which is a rare move. On top of that, the move changes midway to stab the eyes. Unsel realizes that kind of technique has to be from the demonic path, and one of those that makes such a wound is the Tianzu yoga technique. Looking at his grandfather's back, there are 93 traces of hidden weapon usage, like a sky full of falling flowers. There has to be some kind of device that can shoot hundreds at once. Additionally, the underside of the tongue and the nails are discolored. That only happens when you are poisoned by a lethal poison that causes putrid flesh and rotten blood. Putting all this together, there cannot be that many people like that, and he is determined to find that person no matter what. Unsel wastes no time embarking on his vengeance journey, and he is soon seen signing an agreement paper. While signing the papers, one of the instructors urges him to be damn fast about stamping it, but Unsel leaves him dumbfounded when he tears open his thumb to stamp the papers with his own blood. Unsel has dedicated himself to vengeance since his grandfather died, and he doesn't see himself taking any other path aside from this. This is all the more reason he is signing up for the competition, as he sees it as the first step to enacting his revenge. In this world, the Murim is controlled by the Orthodox and the unorthodox sects, and they have been keeping each other in check. The Orthodox sects are led by the Murim Alliance, since they are advocates for justice. On the other hand, the unorthodox sects are centered around the Demon Palace, which worships powers instead of justice. Even though they have been balancing each other out for a long time, the Orthodox sects decided that they wanted to push ahead. This led to the creation of the 18 martial masters, who are known as the Masters for the Greater Good. Because of the perceived threat, the Demon Palace decided to advance its power too. In an attempt to do this, they come up with a plan to create the 10 Demon Masters. The unorthodox sect is looking to pick 10 talented young ones and teach them the martial arts of the demonic sects. To make it interesting, they don't care about their past affiliations or what they were doing before they opt into the competition. Because of this clause, loads of young men headed to the Demon Palace, and one of them was our guy, Unsel. While standing among the crowd of fellow youngsters like himself, Unsel can feel the threatening aura coming from them, and he figures out that one of them is likely associated with the killer of his grandfather. Since his target is someone of high proficiency, Unsel knows he has to become a martial master to have a chance against them. This is why he is determined to become one of the 10 Demon Masters, so he can acquire the strength that he needs to face his adversary. Moments later, a giant, scary-looking man emerges to address the potential Demon Masters, and he introduces himself as head instructor Hyok Ryanyong. The lads are all blown away when Hyok lets them know who he is, and it appears that he is somewhat popular because of his works. Hyok lets them know that they are there to identify the greatest prodigies among all the demon sects, and only those who pass through the trials prepared by them will become candidates to become one of the 10 Demon Masters. And for the first trial, he tells them that martial artists of the Demon Palace will inspect their physicality. The moment the lads hear this, they start to grumble because they don't see this as a trial, since they were expecting something quite intense for the competition. The martial masters ignore their worries and start to inspect their physical bodies to see who is worthy or not. Those who have bulky bodies, on the other hand, are relieved and happy that they get a free pass to the next stage. One of the instructors, Jingak, walks up to Unsel to inspect his body. The moment he touches his body, he thinks to himself that Unsel is dead. He wonders why Unsel decided to participate in the first place, but he notices the terrifying killing intent emanating from Unsel's body. Nonetheless, Jingak figures out that it would be disastrous if he allowed Unsel to pass on to the next stage. Because of this, he doesn't allow him to go through, and Unsel is not surprised. He already knows that he has no chance of passing because he doesn't have the physical body, since all he has been doing all his life is looking after corpses. However, Unsel is convinced that they have not gotten to the end yet. Moments later, the instructor tells them that the first trial is over, and one of the lads erupts in anger, protesting that their way of doing things is unfair. He asks why they are bothering to host a competition when physical aptitude is all that they are concerned about. Hyok then replies by telling the kid that he knows nothing. Hyok says the most important thing when learning martial arts is the muscles and bones. Hyuk makes fun of the dude for failing their most basic standard, even though they made sure to open their door to all. The lad argues that they are supposed to get an opportunity, and this is when Hyuk replies that he has nothing to worry about because the second trial is coming, and he plans to pick those who can learn martial arts even with their poor physical state. Hyuk wastes no time announcing that they have gotten to the second trial. Surprisingly, the second trial requires that they fight each other to survive until there is only one person left. The majority of the lads are surprised to hear the instruction given to them, but the overstimulated lad from earlier wastes no time locking in. Since he is required to kill someone, his sights are locked in on his targets already, and this target appears to be Unseol. He immediately grabs a spear and hurls it in Unseol's direction with the fierce determination to send him to the afterlife. The spear ferociously aimed toward Unseol's position, but in the end, it turns out that he isn't the target. The spear impaled the dude standing beside him, wearing red, who happens to be a rival of the attacker. The dude in red screams in pain as he falls to the ground and coughs up blood before dying. The blood from the attack splatters on Unseol's face as he watches the dude lying in a pool of his own blood. Unseol cannot believe that he is staring at a dead dude who has just been struck to death with a spear. With just a glance, Unseol can figure out the circumstances surrounding the dude's death. He figures out that the spear struck the heart while narrowly missing the ribs, which is a clear indication that the attacker, Woonchung, is quite agile. Woonchung starts boasting since he has taken down an opponent already. From where he is standing, Hyuk figures out that Woonchung can make quick decisions, but he believes that he lacks common sense. He is disappointed and concludes that the lads are a bunch of fools. Jin-gak agrees with him because showing oneself as a threat in such an environment will only place a target on one's back. Nonetheless, he believes that this would cause the other competitors to become serious and realize how deadly the situation is. In no time, chaos erupts, and the entire arena turns into a slaughterhouse. The younger lads who are not used to the sight of death start to panic, but Hyuk and Jin-gak suddenly notice one of the lads acting pretty cool. He is backed against the wall, and he is not concerned with the chaos happening in front of him. He also sees Anseol acting cool-headed in the midst of the chaos, and this makes him retract his initial statement that they are all fools. Anseol remains in a calm state as he believes that the lads are fools because they have all lost themselves to the fear of death. The command was to stay alive till the end, which means the most important thing is to stay alive, not to kill. Anseol figures out that he can survive if he is able to think rationally and act coldly. Unseol bows down to touch the bodies lying on the ground to ascertain how they died. While doing this, one of the lads wielding a long-range weapon notices Unseol and realizes that he has not been participating in the whole chaos. Meanwhile, Anseol is focused on assessing the bodies to know the type of moves that killed them. The guy watching him is pissed, and he hurls his weapon at Unseol. The weapon barely misses Unseol's head and shatters the box he is carrying on his back. The dude makes fun of Unseol, asking him the essence of the box he is carrying, as he is a monk. It turns out that the box contained the birthday gifts he got from his grandfather, and destroying the box just made him mad. Inside it is a short sword, but the attacking dude doesn't think Unseol has what it takes to fight him. He makes fun of Unseol, saying he has a puny sword, but while he is distracted with Unseol, the cool dude from earlier appears behind him and cuts him down. The cool dude then boastfully tells Unseol that he doesn't need to thank him because he served as the best distraction to kill his opponent. While saying all of these, Unseol is focused on what he is doing, and he continues to ignore the dude. The dude can see that Unseol knows no martial arts, and he believes that he is an easy prey. While focused on Unseol, a dude appears from behind and tries to attack him, but he easily cuts him down as if he has eyes behind him. Hyuk then asks Jin-gak about the cool dude because he is holding a special sword known as the Extermination Sword. He wants to know why he is carrying the legacy sword of the Black Soul, which was hailed as the strongest wanderer swordsman. Jin-gak reveals that the dude's name is Nung Wugong, and there are reports that he discovered Black Soul's secret manual, accompanied by his sword. Apparently, Wugong trained using the manual, making him the sole disciple of Black Soul. Jin-gak says Wugong might lack physicality, but he is still the favorite to win the competition because there is no candidate who appears to be stronger than him. However, Jin-gak believes that things might change depending on unforeseen variables. After the chaos settles down, Wugong and Unseol are the last surviving candidates, and Wugong expresses his shock that Unseol was able to make it to the end. Wugong boastfully tells Unseol that he will be considered a candidate of the 10 Demon Masters if he kills him, so he is eager to do that already. Even though Unseol knows that he is going up against what appears to be the strongest guy in the arena, he doesn't look scared as he maintains his usual cold expression. And this is because he has found out what his weakness is. Unseol arms himself with his short sword with the confidence that he can actually win the fight. Wugong decides to play with Unseol a little by swinging his sword at him while delivering several slashes at the same time. Surprisingly, Unseol is able to dodge all of the slashes without sustaining a serious injury to his body. Hyuk and Jin-gak are watching this from afar, and even though it looks like Yoonseol is getting trashed, they can see that Yoonseol was able to twist his body enough at the end of each strike to avoid a fatal wound. It suddenly dawns on Jin-gak that Yoonseol has mastered Woogang's attack patterns by examining the corpses that he left behind. Jin-gak is blown away by the level of observation that Yoonseol possesses. Yoonseol decides to provoke Woogang by telling him that his sword skills are trash because all he has done is slice his flesh and cause no real damage. Jin-gak senses the fact that Yoonseol is provoking Woogang, but he is worried that he might not be able to land the decisive counterattack that is needed to finish the fight. Yoonseol's plan works, and Woogang gets so pissed that he angrily goes after him in an attempt to finish him off. As Woogang dashes toward Yoonseol, Yoonseol figures out that he has just one chance, and he is able to figure out what to do thanks to the corpses that he has examined. He has noticed that Woogang's finishing strike instinctively aims for the opponent's vital points, which are the heart and head. Since this is the case, Yoonseol already cooked up a plan in preparation. Just as Woogang's sword is about to reach him, Yoonseol bows down, ultimately dodging the incoming attack, leaving Woogang pretty open to Yoonseol's attack. In the past, his grandfather had told him about the specific position in the neck that is vulnerable to almost all martial artists. Even a child can take down a martial artist if they strike the acupoint with precision and the required strength that is needed to puncture the area. This is the exact position that Yoonseol is targeting, and without realizing it, Woogang has exposed himself for Yoonseol's short sword to push through. With no room to react, Woogang finds his neck hanging from Yoonseol's short sword, with his blood pouring out excessively. In the end, Woogang's body crashes to the ground, leaving Yoonseol as the sole survivor of the battle. Jin-gak and Hyuk are both shocked to see this, as it turns out to be the unexpected variable that Jin-gak was talking about. Hyuk was disappointed that Woogang died to Yoonseol because he had high expectations, since he was using the sword arts of the Black Soul. Nonetheless, Hyuk has no choice but to declare Yoonseol as the winner of the second trial. Yoonseol suddenly sees himself in a blank space with his grandfather standing in the distance. He excitedly rushes over to his grandfather, but his joy fades away when his grandfather turns around with no eyes. His grandfather frantically tells him that he can't see him, and a wave of reality immediately hits Yoonseol. Just then, Yoonseol jerks back to life and realizes that he is on a ship. He realized that he must have fainted from the loss of blood, but he realized something surprising. He knows that he suffered fatal injuries from the fight, but he is not feeling any pain from the said injuries. He realizes that he must have been treated by a high-level physician from the demonic palace. He also notices that the other dudes standing on the ship all look well-trained, and this is when it dawns on him that they must have been the ones who survived the first trial. Moments later, the latch above them opens, and Jin-gak appears, telling them to disembark because they have reached their destination, which is the next trial area called Hell Island. Jin-gak yells at the candidates, telling them to follow him as he leads them to a block of caves, which will serve as their living quarters. He tells them to discard their previous clothes and weapons and step out of the caves after they are done wearing the prepared clothes and swords. Apparently, they are allowed to pick a cave that they think would suit them best. In no time, Yoonseol has spotted what appears to be the best place that he can stay. On the other hand, two dudes are arguing over who should pick a particular spot, with both claiming that they have a right to it. A third party soon shows up, urging them to stop fighting over the caves because there are loads of nice spots for them to choose from. Deep down, Yoonseol is making fun of the candidates because none of them know what happened during the second trial, and they all have their guards lowered. Yoonseol notices that most of them are wearing expensive clothes, which is an indication that they might all be members of prestigious clans. Yoonseol finally figures out that the second trial was an avenue for them to weed out those whom they can kill. While he is busy standing and assessing the situation, Jin-gak appears behind him, asking him why he hasn't chosen a cave yet, because he has been rather sluggish since the start of everything. It turns out that Jin-gak has been interested in Yoonseol since the last trial, and he is waiting to see which cave he would pick. He urges him to pick quickly, and Yoonseol points to the cave with a small entrance. The cave also has mud spilling out of it, and one of the candidates makes fun of him for picking a cave befitting his status. On the other hand, Jin-gak is extremely impressed, and he considers Yoonseol nothing but a genius because of his choice. The cave might appear to be small, but that is just for the entrance, and the inside of the cave is large enough to train in. In addition, the tiny entrance helps to defend against intruders, and most people avoid the cave after seeing the entrance. But Jin-gak is pleased that Yoonseol gauged everything very well. Moments later, the candidates step out of the caves wearing their black attire, and they all gather to hear what Jin-gak has to say. Jin-gak explains that the Hell Island is home to 10 martial arts facilities, and they can learn one of the 10 demonic sex martial arts in each of the buildings. Apparently, they are free to learn all of the arts or focus on just one in particular. To add to this, they have the freedom over their schedule, as they can sleep, play, train, or do whatever suits them. Yoonseol is shocked to hear this because the second trial was nothing but a hellhole. and he doesn't believe that they are going to leave them to do whatever they want. The candidates waste no time debating which arts they are supposed to learn first. The majority thinks the Fire Rain Sword Sex martial arts are the right choice, as they are considered to be the strongest. Eunseol watches as they all run toward the Fire Rain building, which is considered to be the strongest sect. Eunseol agrees that the Fire Rain is amazing, but doesn't think it would be helpful to him, since he has never learned martial arts before. He wastes no time figuring out the martial arts that would be more useful to him. Eunseol then walks over to the Wandering Beast Pavilion, which is a ragged-looking building. Apparently, the sect has gone down the drain over the years, and they barely stand among the 10 demon sects. The only reason they are still maintaining their status is because of their history of producing a bunch of strong martial artists over the years. Eunseol remembers his grandfather telling him about the sect some time ago. Suddenly, Eunseol notices movements in the ground, and before he knows it, a head pops out of the ground. The dude asks him if he has come to the building with the hopes of becoming one of the 10 demon masters. It turns out that the dude is the master of the Wandering Beast Pavilion, Sa-woo. Eunseol finally pulls himself together, and he tells Sa-woo that he has come to learn the martial arts of the Wandering Beast Pavilion. Sa-woo takes a quick glance at Eunseol and sees how frail his body is. After assessing the situation, he tells Eunseol to leave because he has no intention of teaching him martial arts. He lets Eunseol know that he is a fragile kid and might just die from the training. Eunseol tries to plead his case by telling Sa-woo that he has heard that he can survive anything if he learns the martial arts of the Wandering Beast Pavilion. Sa-woo expresses his shock that Eunseol even knows about wandering martial arts since it is about to go extinct. Nonetheless, Sa-woo lets Eunseol know that their martial arts are pretty difficult to learn, and this even applies to those who have considered themselves to be geniuses. Sa-woo says their martial arts starts with the modification of the body, and with the way he sees it, Eunseol is just going to die in a day if he tries to attempt their training. He suggests that Eunseol leave, but Eunseol suddenly pulls a genius move by bowing to Sa-woo and thanking him for agreeing to teach him their martial arts. This is enough to tell Sa-woo that he is dealing with a crazy fellow, and this forces him to finally agree to become Eunseol's master. However, Sa-woo lets Eunseol know that he is only teaching him because the Demon Palace ordered him to. Sa-woo finally steps out from under the ground and tells Eunseol to start calling him Master Sa. Eunseol introduces himself, but Sa-woo stops him, telling him that he is just a trainee number 1. Without wasting time, Sa-woo suggests that they get started with the training, and he raises his hand while making a peculiar finger gesture. Eunseol is suddenly hit with a strong wave, and before he knows it, he realizes that he has gone blind. Before he starts to panic, Sa-woo tells him not to worry because he only sealed his vision temporarily, using one of the secret techniques of the sect. Sa-woo claims that this is a necessary step in learning the Wandering Beast Path, which is a basic martial technique of the sect. Eunseol is confused by all he just heard, and Sa-woo explains that the Wandering Beast Path is meant to heighten all of his senses and give him reflexes comparable to a beast's. Sa-woo reveals that the sect's martial arts are unlike the other sects because it varies depending on the person learning them. This is the reason the Wandering Beast Path, which is considered a basic technique, is also hard, causing just a few to learn it or master it. However, Sa-woo lets Eunseol know that if he can learn it, he is going to earn the senses of a wandering beast. Sa-woo confidently teases that most die before getting to this point. He then tells Eunseol that he will be back in about an hour and urges Eunseol to get used to being blind by then. After Sa-woo's departure, Eunseol realizes that he is wrong about something. He thought his other senses would become sharper since he had lost his vision, but it doesn't appear that way. He remembers Sa-woo saying it would take an hour for him to get back, and he realizes that it is a very long time on his path. He figures out that he has to adjust as quickly as possible because he is in a competition, and if he is suddenly ambushed in his current situation, he is done for. Eunseol immediately imagines himself getting ambushed, sending a sense of fear and adrenaline through his body that pushes him to jump from point A to point B. However, Eunseol loses, and he figures out that working on his balance is quite important, since he has lost his vision. An hour later, Sa-woo returns, hoping to see Eunseol running around the place in fear, but to his utmost surprise, he sees Eunseol jumping around, which is something quite unique. Sa-woo realizes that Eunseol is imagining a fake enemy, which is why he has adjusted to his lack of vision pretty quickly. Nonetheless, Sa-woo stands unimpressed, and he decides to test Eunseol. He swings his sword at him, telling him to try to evade it. The training between the two then continues, and 3 days later, Eunseol has gotten himself beaten up multiple times by Sa-woo. Sa-woo is surprised that Eunseol hasn't started questioning his training method, but is accepting it instead. Sa-woo then asks Eunseol why he is not saying anything or questioning his training method. Eunseol replies that Sa-woo had initially said the essence of the Wandering Night Pavilion's martial arts is reaching enlightenment, and because of this, he believes that there is a reason behind everything that he is doing. Sawu is impressed by Yunseol's answer, and he tells him that he is actually right with his answer. He then suggests that they continue their training. Sawu charges toward Yunseol, but this time around, Yunseol's senses kick in, and he can suddenly feel Sawu's movement toward him. Even though he can see it, he realizes that he can't dodge it, leaving him with just one option, which is to block the attack. In the last second of the attack, Yunseol raises his sword and he manages to block Sawu's attack before it lands. This shocks Sawu to his bones because he wasn't expecting Yunseol to be able to do this just after 3 days. Nonetheless, Yunseol's block was sufficient and the attack still sent him on his arse. Just then, Sawu throws a bamboo bottle at him, telling him to drink the contents of the bottle. Yunseol drinks it, expecting water, but to his surprise, it isn't. Before he knows it, energy is already surging through his body, and it is as if all of his lost nutrients are being replenished. It turns out that liquid is the spring spiritual water that Sawu had saved all of his life. Even though Sawu gave it out, he is not worried that it was a waste, and this is because he believes that he has just met the once-in-a-lifetime genius that he has been begging for all of his life. After regaining his strength, the training begins again, and they go at each other with high intensity. After swinging at each for a couple of minutes, Sawu suddenly stopped attacking and burst out laughing, as he had finally found what he was looking for the whole time. Suddenly, Yunseol realizes that he can see again, and with a voice laced with honesty, Sawu urges him to forget about becoming one of the 10 demon masters and become an official disciple of his sect instead. Sawu assures him that he will make him one of the top 10 strongest martial masters of the demonic faction in just 10 years if he agrees to this. When Yunseol hears this, he is heavily tempted by the offer because he doesn't think Sawu is lying, but then he remembers that his grandfather's killer is a skilled warrior. Because of this, Yunseol doesn't think he would be satisfied with learning just the Wandering Beast Pavilion's martial arts. Yunseol then humbly rejects the offer, telling Sawu that he wants to become a demon master. Sawu then tells him that he can forget about the fact that he can learn the 10 demonic sects' martial arts because it is even impossible for someone like the Grand Heavenly Demon Emperor, who has enough talents to create martial arts of his own. Sawu continues by saying every martial art is suited for a certain physique and a type of energy. Yunseol mentions that no matter how talented a person is, they can only learn 2 or 3 types of martial arts, which is why focusing on one martial art is the shortcut to becoming the strongest in the demonic faction. Even with all of his preaching, Yunseol shows no sign of changing his mind, leaving Sawu no choice but to back off. Even though he is disappointed, he tells Yunseol that he is going to teach him a different martial art. Yunseol is surprised to hear this, because he has only learned the basics of the Wandering Beast sect, and Sawu lets him know that the sect's arts are not transmitted through steps or theory. In addition to this, Sawu tells Yunseol that he has been practicing the wild beast path of his sect. This is when it dawns on Yunseol that all of the sword strikes that Sawu unleashed on him were actual forms of the wild beast path. Yunseol is extremely grateful for this, and he bows to Sawu, thanking him for his help so far. Sawu urges Yunseol to stop thanking him because it was merely the order of the Demon Palace. Yunseol, on the other hand, argues that he will never forget what Sawu did for him because he even gave him elixirs, but Sawu urges him to forget about it. Sawu mentions that this is how the Jianghu is, and it would be much better for him if he could forget about favors and grudges. With everything settled, Yunseol goes on his knees to bow to Sawu before finally leaving. Sawu watches him in shock and utmost respect as he walks away, wondering where such a gem came from. As Yunseol walks through the forest, he realizes that he is basically sensing everything going on around him, and he wonders if this is because he has learned the wild beast path. Because of how exhausting it is, Yunseol figures out that he has to find a way to control it, because he would never be able to rest properly if this continues. At that moment, he decides to suppress his senses as much as he can. He is able to get this done, and he realizes that there is a clear difference in what appears to be normal and his usual heightened senses. Yunseol then whips out his map to look at where he should learn next. It dawns on him that they are on a time-limited training, and he needs to hurry. After thinking over it very well, he figures out that he has to go to the demonic sect founder who rivaled the great heavenly demon emperor 700 years ago, and talking about this, he is the founder of the Fire Rain Sword sect. Because there might not be time on his side, Yunseol figures out that the strongest sect of the 10 demonic sects might be his only option. Upon arriving at the building, he realizes that it is quite exclusive when compared to the Wandering Beast Pavilion's martial hall. He knocks on the door, and the instructor from inside wonders who it might be. The instructor Jin-gak opens the door, and he is shocked when he sees Yunseol at the door. Yunseol bows to him, telling him that he has come to learn the martial arts of the Fire Rain Sword sect. Even Yunseol is shocked when he realizes that Jin-gak is a martial master from the Fire Rain Sword sect. Jin-gak tells Yunseol to follow him, and he lets him know that the candidates who entered earlier have already completed the elementary trial and have moved on to the intermediate trial. Apparently, there are 3 sections there, which are the elementary, intermediate, and advanced levels. Jingak then asks him why he is just coming to the Fire Rain sect after 2 weeks, and Yunsil reveals that he was learning martial arts at the Wandering Beast Pavilion. Jingak then casually asks if he has learned the Wild Beast Path, and Yunsil affirms this, shocking Jingak. He doesn't want to believe that Yunsil actually mastered the Wild Beast Path in just 2 weeks, even though he is pretty sure that he is a genius. He believes that Sa Wu sent him on his way after he couldn't cope with him. Once they reach the training hall, Jingak gets serious, and he introduces himself to Yunsil, revealing that he is the one in charge of the beginner trial. Jingak asks Yunsil if he is really interested in learning the Fire Rain sword art because it would be better for him to head to another martial arts hall. Yunsil replies that he appreciates Jingak's concern, but lets him know that he is interested in the sword arts of the Fire Rain sword sect. Since this is the case, Jingak slams his foot on the ground and a training manual appears beside him. Jingak tells Yunsil that the manual is the introductory form and practical method of the Fire Rain's 13 forms. He urges him to study the manual and train himself. However, Yunsil is confused because all he can see are strokes written on a large note with no idea of what he is supposed to do about it. Jingak is shocked when he hears this, forcing him to ask Yunsil if he can read a sword manual. Yunsil then gives him a more shocking answer, telling him that he actually can't because up until the competition he has never learned anything about swordsmanship. This answer sends shivers down Jingak's spine, leaving him totally dumbfounded. Jingak is forced to ask again, and Yunsil affirms this, saying he had no prior knowledge of martial arts. Instead of being disappointed, Jingak is actually impressed because he has seen what Yunsil has done so far, and he figures out that if he is properly taught, he would go on to be exceptional. Jingak then asks Yunsil if he can read even if he can't see or follow the sword steps, and Yunsil says yes. Yunsil then reads out the writing in the manual, which is basically instructions to follow before practicing the moves in the manual. Yunsil tries to follow the guide, but he ends up doing rubbish, leaving Jingak in extreme shock. He can't believe that he is about to start teaching Yunsil how to properly move or carry himself in a place where they are supposed to pick one of the 10 demon masters. Jingak moves over to Yunsil and positions his body as it is supposed to be, telling him how to relax his body so his core will not be tense. Immediately, Jingak explains this. Yunsil fixes his posture, and Jingak is ultimately impressed that Yunsil understood without stressing him. Since his posture has been fixed, Jingak tells Yunsil that he is going to teach him the Fire Rain 13 forms without further delay. He hands him a sword and starts showing him how to move his body in the right adjustments and precision. Just as usual, Yunsil is able to follow everything that Jingak is showing in the right way. Jingak stands watching, and he is totally impressed, leaving him to accept the reality that Yunsil is nothing short of being talented. After sessions of training, Jingak tells him to imagine an enemy in front of him and use the Fire Rain 13 forms. Yunsil is initially confused by what Jingak means by creating a fake enemy, but Jingak explains that this is the criterion that he needs to pass if he wants to make his way to the intermediate hall. Apparently, this is to see the sword intent present in his basic moves. The moment Yunsil hears this, he realizes that he has finally gotten the chance to prove himself, and he needs to do it quickly, since the chance came on early. Just as expected, the enemy he imagines is none other than the dude who sent his grandfather to the afterlife. Yunsil draws his sword and unleashes the first form of the Fire Rain, 13 forms with precision and fury. Jingak is stunned when he sees the way Yunsil is moving with the sword and executing the moves. Yunsil continues moving through the 13 forms, but Jingak soon notices that there is a modification to the Fire Rain 13 forms. The sword technique is usually soft and spirited, but Yunsil is using the technique in such a sharp way. Jingak cannot believe what is happening in front of him because changing the basic moves of a sword technique is something possible only for a grandmaster. Jingak also notices that the sword moves are embedded with scary killing intent, just as if he were facing someone who has deeply hurt him. Jingak doesn't want to believe that the sword moves of the Fire Rain sect, which is considered orthodox, are being changed as if they were nothing. Because of this, he starts realizing that Yunsil must have had a unique life while growing up. In no time, Yunsil also notices that he is already altering the Fire Rain sect 13 forms. He wonders if the Wild Beast Path is the reason for this, and even though he would have loved to infuse the two fighting styles, he figures out that it would end up becoming an entirely different swordsmanship and not the Fire Rain 13 forms. With this in mind, he quickly switches back to the natural Fire Rain 13 forms, and this time around, he looks even more dangerous than before. He imagines his target in front of him, and he starts unleashing all the fury inside him. Jingak watches in amazement, and he is forced to admit that Yunsil is incredibly fast. As he gets closer to his target, Yunsil loses himself in the moment, and as if his target is real, he figures out that he can't allow his target to escape. Because of this, he decides to use all the techniques he has left in one go. Eunsil releases all his fury at once and delivers several dangerous slashes to make sure he takes his enemy down, but he does this in such a way that it affects him, causing him to lose his balance and grip on his sword. Jingak watches as Eunsil loses to his opponent, but instead of being mad, he is actually impressed. Eunsil is shocked when he hears Jingak tell him that he passed the test. Jingak then explains to him that what is actually tested is his understanding of the sword and his execution of the Fire Rain 13 forms in a real fight. Jingak helps Eunsil pick up his sword, and he tells him that he passed the criteria set for the test. Jingak lets Eunsil know that his Fire Rain technique is quite incredible, and he urges him to head to the intermediate chamber. Eunsil is extremely grateful for what Jingak did for him because he knows how annoying and stressful it must have been to teach him about swordsmanship when he had no prior knowledge of it. Eunsil shows his gratitude by bowing to Jingak, thanking him for everything so far. Jingak then tells Eunsil to continue working hard, and then mentions that he could sense the strong killing intent coming from his sword. As his last advice, Jingak urges Eunsil not to lose himself because of the killing intent. As they say their goodbyes, Jingak finally understands the fact that Eunsil learned the Wild Beast path in just 2 weeks because his learning speed is incredible. Because of this, he is even moving to the intermediate chamber way faster than Jingak himself expected. Jingak was initially doubtful of Eunsil's capability of making it to the intermediate chamber, but after their session together, he is certain that he would. In addition, Jingak is pretty confident that the intermediate chamber instructor, Qian Wugang, would be obsessed with Eunsil by the time he spends some time with him. Eunsil soon makes his way into the intermediate chamber, and the instructor doesn't welcome him with warm hands, as he urges Eunsil to buzz off because they are full already. Qian is acting cold toward him because he is not impressed with the fact that Eunsil just passed the elementary chamber after weeks of training. Qian says Eunsil has no chance in the intermediate chamber with the type of talent that he has. In his defense, Eunsil explains to Qian that he came late because he spent time training at the Wandering Beast Pavilion. When Qian hears this, he is still not impressed, as he believes that Eunsil must have escaped from the Wild Beast training thanks to the intense training over there. However, since Eunsil passed the elementary test, Qian has no choice but to tell him to take his seat with the rest of the candidates. Qian then continues his teaching, telling the candidates that the Fire Rain Thundering Sword that they are about to learn is made of rapid movements, and if they are not skilled with the sword, they are going to end up harming themselves. Qian continues by saying the Thundering Sword is pretty hard to use in combat, just like the Fire Rain 13 forms. Nonetheless, they are required to learn it because it is a basic martial art, and the main focus is to sharpen their prowess with the sword, not to win. Qian then calls forward one of the candidates, Bayok Hansung. For their practical purpose, Qian tells him to pick an opponent to duel. Bayok smiles evilly before asking if he is allowed to pick anyone of his choice, and Qian says yes. Just as expected, Bayok points to Eunsil, saying he wants him as his opponent. Qian wants to debate this, but Bayok reminds him that he already told him that he can pick anyone. Qian still tries to fight the decision by asking Bayok how he plans to test his knowledge against someone who just joined the class. Qian urges Bayok to pick someone else, but Eunsil suddenly cuts in, telling the instructor that he is fine with it. Qian is shocked to hear this, and Eunsil tells Qian that he learned how to use the sword from Jingak. Eunsil says he believes that he has a better chance at learning if he practices against others. To Qian, Eunsil is only trying to protect his ego, but he is not going to stop him. Qian then tells them to go ahead, saying he hopes that they can reach the advanced chamber. Bayok, on the other hand, considers himself the luckiest dude on the planet because he just got himself a rookie that he can trash in whatever way he likes. He is even planning to kill Eunsil so he can show how skillful he is to the rest of the class. The two then arm themselves with wooden swords in preparation for the battle. Bayok commends Eunsil for his bravery, but tells him that he needs more than bravery if he is going to survive in the Murim. Bayok wastes no time dashing toward Eunsil, but Eunsil easily dodges his attack. Bayok is impressed, but believes that Eunsil won't be able to keep it up. He goes hard again, forcing Qian to block his next attack with his sword instead of dodging. With the way their swords are hitting each other, Bayok can see that Qian is truly a beginner, and this makes him even happier. Bayok continues having fun with Qian and even unleashes the Thundering Sword technique, but Eunsil remains calm-headed as he dodges everything that Bayok throws at him. At this point, frustration has started setting in, and Qian can see this. He figures out that Bayok might not be skilled with the sword, but at the same time, Eunsil is dodging everything as if he is predicting Bayok's moves. This starts to convince Qian that Eunsil might have truly learned the Wild Beast path. Since he is a martial artist, he knows how difficult it is to learn the Wild Beast path even though it is just a basic technique. Because it is usually learnt by experienced martial masters, Bayok doesn't want to believe that Eunsil has learned it in just 2 weeks. Qian decides to make everything serious, and he tells Eunsil that the duel is not only about dodging because he is watching to see their sword skills and to also test their reflexes. Upon hearing this, Onsil decides to get serious with Bayok, and he goes after him with the Fire Rain 13 forms. However, Bayok doesn't feel any form of threat from the technique because it appears to be slightly different from the 13 forms. He is confident enough to think he can actually dodge the slash with little to no effort. However, he soon realizes that he might actually be wrong because the sword technique comes at him so hard that he finds himself struggling. Several questions start running through Bayok's head as he wonders if Yunseol was intentionally testing him with a variant of the 13 forms just so he can mock him. He also wonders if Yunseol is doing this to get noticed by the instructor so he can be automatically promoted to the advanced chamber. Realizing that with the way things are going, he is going to be disgraced, Bayok decides to tap into another sword style, the Asura sword style. He delivers the blood-shattering strike in an attempt to finish off Onseol in one go. Apparently, the sword style is a lethal move of the Asura sword sect, and since Cheon didn't restrict the type of sword styles that they can use, he cannot stop the fight. Suddenly, Cheon notices that even with the fact that Yunseol is going up against a dangerous fighting style, he has maintained his balance. The thought of Yunseol actually learning the wild beast path crosses his mind yet again, even though he still doesn't want to believe. Onseol continues dodging the attacks coming at him, forcing Bayok to resort to an even deadlier technique, the Bloody Wind Warping Moon. Even Cheon is dumbfounded when he sees this, and he watches in horror as Bayok leaps into the air toward Yunseol. Everything happens so fast, and by the time everything becomes clear to everyone, Yunseol's sword is pushing toward Bayok's chest with the help of the Fire Rain 13th form. Onseol looks pretty cool as he retracts his sword, and Bayok coughs up blood before crashing to the ground, seemingly appearing to have died from Yunseol's strike. Everyone's eyes light up in shock and horror as they all try to digest the fact that Bayok might actually be dead. Onseol walks away to return the training sword, and Cheon stands over Bayok's body to see that he is truly dead because he got hit in a very vital spot. Cheon then turns to Onseol, asking him if he has always been a disciple of the Wandering Night Pavilion, but he says no. Cheon is forced to ask him if he truly mastered the wild beast path in just 2 weeks, and Onseol replies that all he did was learn the basics of the whole thing. Cheon smiles in disgust when he hears this, since what he just witnessed doesn't appear to be basic in any way or form. He teases Onseol, asking him if he has been taught how to learn too. Onseol tries to defend himself, but Cheon cuts him off, telling him to clean up the mess he made. Grumbling soon erupts among the candidates, who believe that it is wrong that Yunseol committed murder during a normal sparring session. They all expect him to be punished for this, but Cheon quickly clears up their mistake. He lets them know that it might be called a martial chamber, but they should not mistake it for one. He reminds them that they are on Hell Island, and if they use a technique that is meant to kill the opponent, they should expect the same to be used against them. With this in mind, Cheon begins the training session again, and the candidates start sparring against each other. Those lost during the sparring session are all sent away by Cheon as he tells them that they have failed the trial. He tells them that they are all free to find another martial hall that would accommodate them because their time with the Fire Rain sect is over. The failed candidates ask for more chances, but Cheon tells them that they are not getting any more chances. Cheon says they might have passed the first trial because they were fit, but to learn the Fire Rain sword they are going to need potential and talent to surpass even their own limits. Since they lacked the qualities to surpass their own limits, they failed. After the failed candidates and the successful candidates left the hall, Cheon notices that Yunseol is still in the hall, and he asks him what he is still doing there. Confused, Yunseol asks Cheon if he is required to leave too, and Cheon says yes. He tells him that he won and has gained the status to pass on to the advanced chamber. However, Yunseol tells Cheon that he would rather stay in the intermediate chamber. Cheon is confused and asks Yunseol why he would choose to do that. Yunseol explains that the only technique he learned was the Fire Rain 13 forms, and he has yet to learn anything in the intermediate chamber. Cheon is surprised that Onseol learned the Wild Beast path, which allowed him to see through Bayok's attack, but he claims that he hasn't learned anything. Without being apologetic, Yunseol maintains his stance that he has yet to learn anything. Realizing that Yunseol has no intention of giving up, Cheon has no choice but to agree to teach him the Fire Rain Thundering Sword, which is the upgrade of the Fire Rain 13 forms. However, he lets Yunseol know that he hates it when people try to play tricks on him in an attempt to make an impression. He sternly tells Yunseol that he is going to behead him if he finds out that he has learned any other sword technique other than the Fire Rain 13 forms. 4 days after this, Yunseol is still training under Cheon, and they have gone through rigorous sessions together. Cheon has checked through all the manners that he knows while training Yunseol and has confirmed that he truly lacks the fundamentals of sword techniques. Even though he just started learning the sword techniques, his determination and concentration are something worth noting. Cheon can see the fierce determination written all over Yunseol's face as if he would die if he didn't learn martial arts. Cheon finally realized how it was possible for Onseol to learn the Wild Beast path in just a fortnight. To make it interesting, Yunseol is already wielding the thundering sword technique, showing just how crazy his learning speed is. Onseol is going hard just as usual when Xian tells him to stop, telling him that he has learned the principles of the Fire Rain Thundering Sword. Onseol is skeptical when he hears this, and Xian explains to him that the Fire Rain Thundering Sword is a sword technique that quickly twists the body around to help take on several moves. Xian mentions that the moves are not something he can actually use in a real battle. However, Xian has noticed that Yunseol is trying to use all the techniques in real life, as if he is trying to end someone's life. Yunseol is confused because he believes that one learns sword techniques to be able to use them in real life. Xian admits that killing intent is needed in the demonic arts, but at the same time, when aiming for a higher realm, the Fire Rain Sword abandons the killing aspect. Xian tells Onseol that he has to get rid of the murderous intent stuck in his head, or else he would end up creating a martial art that would harm him. It finally dawns on Yunseol that Xian is practically saying the same thing that Jingak told him. Xian confesses that he has also lived with killing intent in the past, which forced him to kill all those who stood in his way. However, this made him lose honor and pride, and his martial prowess came crumbling down. Xian continues by saying the techniques are meant to kill and might give the illusion that it will take one to a higher realm, but in reality, it is actually an obstacle that stands in the path of swordsmanship. As if talking to his son, Xian lets Yunseol know that he has to let go of his killing intent. Just as he hears this, Yunseol remembers what his grandfather once told him about those who wield the sword. His grandfather once told him that those who wield a sword have a past stained with despair and nothing but misfortunes, which is why people in the Murim hate to talk about their past. Onseol then asks Xian why he is telling him all these things, and Xian lets him know that he is doing that so he can know that he once lived with killing intent too. Xian then asks Yunseol for his name, and when he tells him, it dawns on him that he was the one who survived the second trial that Jingak told him about. Xian then tells Yunseol that he has a big problem on his hands, and when Yunseol asks what it is, Xian lets him know that he lacks the basics of martial arts. Xian explains to him that those he is competing with have been learning martial arts since they were kids. Xian says the gap between them would only widen if he began to learn the Fire Rain sword technique in the advanced chamber. Xian tells Onseol that he has to quickly master the basic martial arts so that he has the fundamental foundation to build upon the Fire Rain sword. Because of this, Xian decides that he is going to teach Onseol the unrivaled lightning and thunder technique that he created himself. However, before they begin, he lets Yunseol know that he has destroyed all the nerve endings in his fingers because he failed to master the said technique. This shows just how dangerous the technique is, and if things go wrong, Yunseol might actually lose control over his arms instead. If this happens, he won't be able to move to the advanced chamber, but instead become a cripple. With the warning set out, Xian asks Onseol if he still wants to go ahead with the training. Without hesitation, Yunseol agrees to this because he doesn't care about losing some damn arms, since he is willing to sacrifice his soul as long as he gets his revenge. A month after this, Onseol was able to learn the unrivaled lightning and thunder techniques before finally getting the chance to leave the intermediate chamber. Even though Cheon told Yunseol that he was pretty quick with it, Yunseol still thinks he took too long to learn the techniques. Since he has learned the said techniques, it is finally time for him to proceed to the advanced level. The moment he opens the door to the advanced chamber, he has everyone staring at him, and Yunseol senses a different ferocity from the trainees, which is understandable since they have seen what he can do. Yunseol can't believe that people look down on the job of being an undertaker, while killing someone is regarded in high esteem. The instructor urges Onseol to step in and take his seat because he is about to begin the lesson. Because they have a new trainee among them, the instructor reveals that he is going to explain the central reading of the Rain Sword as well as the 7 teachings. He starts by telling them that they must know how to balance power within every part of their body so that they can have an unshakable stance. After a minute of reading the note in front of him, Yunseol realizes that he wouldn't have understood shit if he didn't learn the advanced martial arts from the intermediate chamber. After the instructor is done with the day's verbal teachings, he tells Onseol to follow him. The instructor then takes Yunseol to the garden at the back of the chamber. He mentions that there are situations where one can defeat an armed enemy without a sword. In this situation, he says the said person no longer needs the sword to form sword arts. The instructor then whips out a plant branch and points it directly at Yunseol before asking him an important question. He asks him how he is going to respond if he is suddenly attacked and he has no sword in his hands. The instructor reveals that while he was busy in the intermediate chamber, his mates have learned the Shining Mystique, which is the first form of the Fire Rain Sword, which is why they are currently discussing the theory. The instructor lets Yunseol know that he has no hope of learning anything from him if he can't understand what he is currently asking him. Since his training career depends on it, the instructor urges Yunseol to answer carefully. Yunseol then takes a deep breath before replying that if he is lacking a sword, he will simply use his opponent's sword. Without wasting time, he tries to grab the plant branch from the instructor, but before his hand can even reach one of the leaves, the instructor vanishes and appears behind him. The instructor scolds Unseol, telling him that his answer is too hasty. Unseol, on the other hand, is not concerned with what the instructor just said because he is busy wondering when the instructor got behind him. Unseol tries going after the instructor again, but the result remains the same. Unseol soon finds himself getting frustrated because he can't predict where the instructor will move to. Unseol wasn't expecting to easily catch him, but at the same time, he couldn't believe that he couldn't even follow his movements at all. Unseol is now worried because he knows that he has no chance in the advanced chamber if he fails to impress the instructor right there and then. Unseol then comes to the conclusion of using the wild beast path to its full potential, even if it is just once. With his mind set on this, he jumps toward the plant branch, but just as he is about to touch it, he is sent flying backwards by the instructor. Unseol crashes into the ground, looking totally disappointed, but before he can start wallowing in his failure, the instructor dashes toward him and pats him on the shoulder. The instructor laughs out loud before telling him that he has passed the test. Unseol is shocked when he hears this because he couldn't even touch the old man, which leaves him confused about how he actually passed the test. The instructor ignores his question and tells him that he is going to learn the Shining Mystique technique starting the next day. He urges him to come early and even earlier than his mates. Unseol is pleased to hear this, and he thanks the instructor for his grace before finally taking his leave. As he walks away, the instructor stares at the plant branch in his hand, and a bunch of the leaves fall off. Unknown to Unseol, he was actually able to reach the leaves, but the instructor was wise enough to send him flying to make it seem like he failed. The instructor is extremely impressed, and he admits that he is expecting great things from Unseol. Later on, Unseol is walking through the woods when he starts thinking of circulating his chi instead of resting, since a fight might as well break out anytime. Suddenly, he notices multiple presences behind him, and thanks to his wild senses, he is able to figure out how many are out there. 5 dudes soon appear behind, and they all look pissed. They tell Unseol that he has been acting pompously since the intermediate chamber, and they are there to teach him a good lesson. The 5 boast about how they are called the 5 peak swords because they are geniuses, and they are there to kill him. Instead of engaging in baseless arguments with the 5, Unseol leaves his sharp senses turned on, and with this, he is able to figure out that there is one more person lurking in the shadows. Just as the 5 are about to make their move, a scary dude appears behind and knocks out the ringleader. He crashes to the ground from just a strike, and this sends fear down the spines of the others. They turn around to see the attacker, who turns out to be a strong trainee known as Seo Jinha. Jinha ignores the other 4 and turns to Unseol, telling him that they need to talk. The 4 manage to get his attention by asking him what he is doing there, and Seo Jinha tells them to piss off because he has no business with them. The 4 pick up their last dude and they dash out of there while promising to get back at Unseol. Without a doubt, Unseol could clearly see that Jinha is quite strong. Once Jinha confirms that the 4 are gone, he turns to Unseol to ask him a seemingly important question. He points his sword at him and asks him who he is, and the question leaves Unseol confused. Earlier that day in class, the instructor had called Unseol out to try out his technique. Unseol grabbed his sword and took in a deep breath before he started swinging his sword with precision. After swinging for a couple of minutes, he finally stops, and the aftermath of his move is clear cuts in the ground. Even the instructor is impressed because Unseol has somewhat embedded the technique with killing intent. After he is done showcasing his prowess, the instructor calls the next trainee, who turns out to be Seo Jinha. As he steps onto the stage, he walks past Unseol, and he looks absolutely menacing. When it is time for Jinha to show off the first technique of the Fire Rain Sword, he changes it and displays a technique that is a perfect counter to what Unseol just displayed. Unseol had seen this as a clear warning. Now that he is standing face to face with Jinha, Unseol asks him what he meant by who he is. Jinha screams at Unseol, believing that he is only playing dumb to the question. Jinha reveals that he is well aware that not everyone is there on the island because they want to become one of the 10 Demon Masters. The moment Unseol hears this, reality starts to dawn on him. He realizes that the opportunity to learn the 10 demonic arts is quite amazing, but everything was rushed and appeared to be badly executed. He then figures out that the opportunity is serving 2 purposes, and one of them is a trap laid out to catch something. With a calm and genuine voice, Unseol asks Jinha if there is a spy on the island. With the way he asked the question, Jinha could see that Unseol wasn't lying. Jinha then sheathes his sword, saying Unseol is not the person he is looking for. Before leaving, Jinha tells Unseol to stop acting out of line, because if he continues getting on his nerves, he might just kill him. After Jinha leaves, Unseol realizes that there is a lot more going on beneath the surface than he thought. Unseol figures out that it is normal for him to have missed some things because he has been solely focused on training. Unseol decides to push any thoughts of distraction out of his mind because no matter who it is, he will end up fighting them in the end. Not long after this, the instructor tells the trainees that they have come to the end of their training. After giving them a farewell speech that also counts as a motivational speech, he wishes them luck on their adventure in the Muram. Suddenly, the bell goes off. And while the trainees are wondering what is happening, the instructor tells them to head to the Stone Mountain, which is located in the center of the island. Moments later, the trainees are gathered at the Stone Mountain where the head instructor is present. The moment he realizes that everyone is present and accounted for, the head instructor tells the trainees that it is finally time for them to begin the third trial. The majority of the trainees are confused when they hear the head instructor talk about the third trial because they were all expecting him to say the second trial. The only person who actually knows the real deal is Yoonseol. Jin-gak then informs the trainees that all of the living quarters will be closed very soon, and they won't be able to return to the chambers until they have picked the 10 demon masters. He urges them to grab whatever it is that they need inside the caves before they are closed. One of the trainees then asks how the 10 demon masters would be selected, and the head instructor expresses his disappointment that they have been on the island for quite some time and they still haven't realized the game at hand. The head instructor then lays it out plain, telling the trainees that they are expected to kill each other. Hyuk says they are to kill each other until there are only 10 of them left. Hyuk says whatever method they employ is up to them. They are even free to run or hide, but he lets them know that there is a downside to this. Apparently, as time passes, they are going to restrict the areas where the trainees can stay, and those caught in the restricted areas will be killed by the killer demons standing behind him. The killer demons are a bunch of scary dudes in capes, and just the mere sight of them will cause one to pee their pants. Even Unsil starts sweating because he can sense the killing intent from the killer demons from where he is standing, which is a clear indication that they are incredible martial artists. Just then, one of the trainees asks Hyuk if they are allowed to attack the killer demons. Hyuk laughs out loudly when he hears this and expresses how impressed he is that there are candidates who are looking higher than the others. Hyuk then tells them that they are free to fight the killer demons and are even free to kill them. He reveals that any of the candidates who is able to eliminate a killer demon will immediately become one of the 10 demon masters, thus spicing up the entire game. The moment he says this, it dawns on the trainees that eliminating a killer demon appears to be even more difficult than taking on a bunch of trainees. Hyuk then reminds the trainees that they are free to team up or even ambush one another, as there is no method that is frowned upon as long as it helps them become one of the 10 demon masters. After they are dismissed and they get everything they need from the caves, the trainees make their moves. Yoonseol wastes no time distancing himself from the lots because he is quite aware that he already drew attention to himself in the course of their training. He figures out that he is going to get jumped, just like the so-called Peak 5 wanted to jump him in the forest. He knows that his priority is to get to a safe place, and his best pick is the Wandering Pavilion. Upon reaching there, he notices that the ground feels quite different from what he remembered. He goes down on his knees to feel the changes in the ground, and while doing this, he senses someone coming in his direction. Just then, a dude being chased down by some other trainees appears from the bushes, urging Yoonseol to help him because they are trying to kill him. Yoonseol grabs his sword, ready to strike in case it is a setup. The dude assures Yoonseol that he is going to repay him if he helps him escape from the dudes chasing him down. Yoonseol assesses the situation and realizes that the dude might actually be telling the truth because the wounds on his body appear to be real. Yoonseol can sense the 3 people who are chasing him, and he wonders if they are a team or not. Even though Yoonseol is not interested in whatever they have going on, he can't risk exposing himself because of the dude that they are chasing. Realizing that he has no choice, Yoonseol is forced to hide himself and the dude in one of the hidden underground pouches located around the pavilion. The trio chasing the dude soon shows up, but they find no one, leaving them totally confused. They walk around the pavilion trying to find their target, but unknown to them, he is right below them. After searching the area and realizing that their target is not there, the trio has no choice but to leave to continue their search. Once Yoonseol confirms that the assailants are going, he and his conditional partner finally emerge from their hiding place. The dude is grateful that he survived the whole thing, and he thanks Yoonseol for his help. While he is busy thanking Yoonseol for his help, Yoonseol is busy assessing the situation. Yoonseol figures out that Sa-woo must have prepared a new set of holes for him to help him hide. While he was hiding, he could sense the wild beast path's sensations expanding, going farther than normal. He could basically sense everything inside the dirt just as if he was seeing it. He realizes that Sa-woo must have wanted to teach him the path that uses vibration. His conditional partner finally introduces himself as Gyum Chil-young, and he is from the Blood Sect. Gyum asks to know Yoonseol's name, but he just ignores him. Yoonseol is not ready to sit down, and he starts heading to his next location. Gyum urges him to stop, and he asks him if he can join him just to be safer. Gyum says he sees Yoonseol as a trustworthy person since he helped him escape earlier. Yoonseol remains silent, and Gyum decides to take his silence as a yes. With excitement written all over him, he runs after Yunseol like he is a lost puppy, ultimately becoming his partner. After walking for a couple of minutes, Eunseol puts his hand on the ground to feel the earth's vibrations. With the help of this, he is able to figure out that there is a fight going on ahead, and he suggests that they take a different route to avoid the battle. Gum is blown away when he sees what Yunseol can do, and he urges him to teach him how to do it, but our guy just ignores him and continues walking. Suddenly, Yunseol hears one of the fighters talking about how determined he is to avenge his fallen comrades. The moment Yunseol hears this, it sends a familiar feeling down his entire body. He realizes that the guy is also pursuing the feeling of revenge just as he is. Guillaume notices the sudden change in Eunseol, and he asks him what is happening. But before he can talk further, Yunseol lets him know that they are taking a detour. It turns out that Yunseol doesn't want to avoid the fight again, but wants to be actively involved in it. As they approach the battle area, a trainee is perfectly hidden on a tree branch, and the moment he notices Eunseol, he makes his move. However, Yunseol easily blocks his attack, shocking the dude, who thought he had the upper hand. He frantically asks Yunseol how he was able to stop the forbidden ultimate concealment technique when he is not an assassin. Yunseol ignores his question and replies with a fatal slash cut to slice him in two. Yunseol admits that the assassin technique would have been a pain in the ass if he hadn't learned the wild beast path. Since the fight is still ongoing, Eunseol thinks of helping the trapped dude get rid of the assassins so he can tell him how it feels to accomplish revenge. Just as they are about to finish him off, Eunseol appears out of nowhere and attacks them. The sudden attack shocks them, giving Eunseol the edge as he delivers his devastating slashes. However, one of the assassins appears right behind Yunseol and almost cuts his head off, but Yunseol dodges the strike. Before he knows it, Yunseol finds himself surrounded, but they still pose no threat to his ferocity. He is able to cut them down, leaving just one dude. While he is preparing to go up against the dude, the trapped guy thirsting for vengeance emerges from behind to kill the last assassin. Having cut down the last assassin, he lets off a huge smile that he was able to accomplish his vengeance. Suddenly, he crashes to the ground before Yunseol even gets to ask him anything. Guillaume emerges from the bush where he is hiding, asking if the fight is over. Yunseol ignores him and bows beside the dude to check him out. This is when Guillaume finally shows his true colors as he tries to stab Yunseol from behind. However, Yunseol is not one to be easily fooled, as he blocks the attack before it even reaches him. Guillaume is stunned when Yunseol blocks the attack, as he wasn't expecting it. Yunseol pushes him backwards, while blaming him for depriving him of his chance to ask the burning question in his mind. Guillaume is not concerned about whatever question Yunseol has, but he is more concerned about how Yunseol was able to figure out that he was going to betray him. Eunseol then reveals that he already knew from the very start. While they were in the underground shelter, Eunseol had seen that Guillaume was hiding a bunch of hidden weapons under his clothing. In addition, he was not able to move properly because his body was stiff, thanks to the weapons on his body. Eunseol confesses that he only kept Guillaume around because of curiosity. He wanted to know if the art of deceit would help him in the future. Guillaume hears this and loses his mind, believing that Eunseol is spewing nonsense because he considers his acting the perfect one. He throws his weapons at Eunseol, but he blocks everything pretty easily, making life harder for Guillaume. Fear starts creeping through his body with the realization that Eunseol might actually be able to predict his moves. Before he knows it, Eunseol's speed gives him the edge, and he reaches Guillaume in no time, delivering a cut to his shoulder. Eunseol then tells Guillaume that he might have the best hidden weapons, but they are basically useless if he can't hide them very well. Refusing to give up, Guillaume makes one last-ditch attempt in trying to finish Eunseol off with everything he has. Guillaume dashes toward Eunseol, but Eunseol shows him how superior he is by easily moving through him and cutting him down. After Guillaume is dead, Eunseol admits that the fight was tough on him, and he would have run into problems if he didn't know about the hidden weapons. He turns around to look at Guillaume's face, and it looks just like the regular death stare that most dying people have. On the other hand, the revenge dude has a calm and accomplished death face, and Eunseol wonders if he would have the same kind of face when he finally gets his revenge. Before leaving the scene, Eunseol picks up the guy's sword, which now gives him the chance to wield two swords. Meanwhile, there is an unknown entity hiding in the bushes, and they are watching Eunseol's every move. They have seen the way he fights and how dangerous he is. The unknown fellow admits that Eunseol is talented, but they believe he still has to upgrade his skills or else he is not going to survive on the island. The following day, Eunseol finds himself getting chased down by a bunch of trainees who want him gone at all costs. Eunseol has suffered several cuts to his body, but he keeps running because he can see that the assailants have no intentions of backing down. As he tries to get ahead, he is also trying to think of how to escape his current situation. And all the while, the head instructor and Jingak are watching from a mountain peak. The head instructor asks for updates, and Jingak tells him that out of the 86 trainees, there are 41 still alive. The head instructor is pleased that there are still 41 trainees left even after 3 days, and he concludes that the rest are skilled. He then decides that it is time to test their skills. Meanwhile, Unsul ties his daggers together, and just as his assailants are about to close down, he throws it backwards to knock one of them back and gives himself a fighting chance again. Unsul quickly figures out that he has no chance whatsoever if he continues fighting on the open field. It is at this moment that he decides to change the terrain of the fight to where he is going to have a bit of a chance. Unsul runs straight for the Fire Rain sect building, but unknown to him, the head instructor has decided that the location is the next place he wants to restrict. Unsul safely makes it into the building, and he leaves a trail of blood for his assailants to follow. They track him to a tight space and believe that they have cornered him until Unsul appears behind them. He almost relieves the closest guy of his head, but he manages to block it, while alerting his friends that Unsul is behind them. The dude boastfully tells Unsul that they are not fools and would not fall for such cheap tricks. A fierce battle ensues between the two, but Unsul is able to read his sword paths, giving him the chance to easily dodge the enemy's attacks. The moment he dodges the guy's attack, Unsul gets the golden chance to deliver a counterattack, and he takes his chance. He swings his sword so hard that it slices his opponent's head off his neck. The rest of the crew gets really mad and tries to attack Unsul all at once, but it soon dawns on them that the tight space is limiting their attack capabilities. Unsul, on the other hand, has no problem whatsoever as he thrives very well in such tight positions. Unsul gets the upper hand, making life hard for his assailants. After assessing the situation, Unsul realizes that he has a chance of taking them all down if he engages them one-on-one. Realizing that Unsul is just going to pick them off one by one if they allow him, one of the assailants frantically throws his whip weapon, forcing it to bounce off the wall. The whip almost catches Unsul, but he manages to jump out of the line of fire at the last minute. Realizing that they have chased Unsul out of the tight space, the rest of the assailants try to run out, but they run into a brick wall, who happens to be the team leader. He looks absolutely furious because the crew is trying to run away from a fight. The crew tries to defend their claims, saying they are not running but trying to reposition themselves. The captain ignores their excuses, and with just one swing from his weapon, he cuts their heads off, leaving blood splattering everywhere. He boastfully talks about how trashy his crew was, which was why he didn't want to roll with them in the first place. Now that the flies have been taken care of, Unsul finds himself facing off against the captain of the team. He admits that Unsul is skilled and then introduces himself as Wu Muncheong. He asks Unsul what his name is, but Unsul is more concerned about Wu's status. He wants to know if he is the leader of the team, and this pisses Wu off. He concludes that there is no need to exchange names since Unsul is about to die at his hands. Wu swings his whip weapon at Unsul to grab his sword, and before Unsul can react, his weapon shatters right in his hand. Wu starts making fun of Unsul, saying the Fire Rain sect only taught him one defense technique. This is when it finally dawns on Unsul that the dude knows everything about his Shining Mystique technique. But the question of how he knows remains. Unsul wonders if Wu has some sort of information network that he doesn't know about. Wu notices that Unsul is carried away with his thoughts, and he comes after him. Unsul barely dodges Wu's attack, but watches as Wu destroys everything his weapon touches. Unsul figures out that fighting Wu in an enclosed space is basically useless, so he decides to run to the main hall. Unsul arms himself with his second sword and then prepares to engage Wu, but another swing from Wu pushes him backwards. Wu emerges from the dark space, talking about how disappointed he is that Unsul is not giving him enough fight. He swings his whip at Unsul, and before he knows it, he finds himself trapped by the whip. Wu makes fun of Unsul, telling him that it is almost over for him. Unsul realizes that he can actually block Wu's attacks using Shining Mystique, but the problem is that he doesn't have the power to project enough force to stop it. This is when it dawns on him that a totally different technique is needed, which is a destructive force strong enough to cut through steel. The moment the whip surrounds Unsul, Wu believes that he has finished the job, but he suddenly realizes that Unsul is trying to cook up something. Even with this, he is not worried, since he believes that Unsul is trying to use the Shining Mystique. His relaxed face turns into a horrified face when Unsul bursts through the trapped space with a powerful force, accompanied by a golden aura. It turns out that he just used the unrivaled lightning and thunder technique that Xian taught him. Before Wu can react, Unsul has reached him, thanks to the force he is coming with. In the blink of an eye, Unsul moves through him, delivering a fatal cut through his body, which he only felt after Unsul was done. All at once, his bodily functions cease to exist, and Wu crashes to the ground dead. After Wu is dead, Unsul finally feels the effect of the skill he just used, causing him to cough up blood. Even though the skill is quite powerful and dependent, Unsul realizes that he can't use it freely because it is way too advanced for his level. Nonetheless, he is glad that he won the fight even though it might have taken up his time. He figures out that the restricted regions will soon change, and he needs to move quickly. Suddenly, he senses an ominous aura behind him, and when he turns around, he sees a killer demon staring down at him with all monstrosity. Fear creeps through Yunseol's body as he doesn't want to believe what his eyes are seeing. It starts to dawn on him that the restricted zones must have changed while he was busy fighting the group he just defeated. However, he starts wondering if he has a chance of leaving without a fight, since he didn't end up in the restricted zone because he was running away from combat. He slightly moves his foot while watching the killer demon, and when he doesn't react, Yunseol believes that he is in the clear. He assumes that the killer demon is giving him a pass, and he quickly makes use of it. He runs past the killer demon, but just as he is about to move past him, his wild beast senses kick in, and he sees his head flying off his body. Yunseol barely changes his trajectory to avoid getting beheaded. He almost pees his pants when he realizes that he couldn't even sense when the killer demon moved, and if not for his wild beast senses, he would have been dead meat. Yunseol finally comes to the conclusion that he can't be fooled by the killer demon's calm face because the moment he makes a move, he is going to attack him. Yunseol then remembers what Sa-woo told him about carnivores and herbivores. He had learned that predators have a hard time catching their prey whenever it is moving in the zigzag position. However, the carnivore still comes out on top, and this is because the prey's movement gets predictable at some point, giving the predator the chance to intercept and kill their prey. Since predictability is the issue, Yunseol lets off a loud scream before deciding to start moving in the most weird way to make sure his movements can't be predicted. Yunseol kicks his plan into motion, and his first move is able to evade the killer demon, impressing the dude. Yunseol starts with a predictable zigzag movement, and the moment the killer demon catches on to this, Yunseol starts dodging his attacks with the wild beast path. Just as he is about to make his final move, he realizes that the killer demon has gotten to him, and he has his sword to his neck. Sweat ran down his face with the realization that he was too late. However, he is shocked when the killer demon suddenly stops instead of executing him on the spot. Yunseol looks around and realizes that he has crossed the restricted area already. Yunseol takes a moment to think about what just happened and realizes that he couldn't even make a single opening, though he put his all into it. Yunseol turns around to leave and finally understands what it means to be a martial artist. It dawned on him that he was just a frog in a well and he stood absolutely no chance. After making it to a safe distance, Yunseol takes a moment to think about the whole situation again, and he realizes that the killer demon actually has skills that can match his grandfather's killer. Yunseol figures out that he has to be able to surpass the skills of a killer demon if he wants to have a chance. Suddenly, he hears a voice behind him, telling him that he has been looking for him. He turns around to see a dude sitting on a rock and staring at him, and talking about the wild beast path that Yunseol learned. Yunseol hears this, and figures out that a lot of info has been passed around about him. The dude initially plans to introduce himself, but changes his mind, saying Yunseol is about to die, so he has no reason to know his name. The dude charges toward Yunseol, but Yunseol remains calm as he easily moves to dodge the dude's attack. The dude is impressed that Yunseol actually dodged his attack with his beast-like senses. The dude admits that Yunseol is on the path to becoming one of the demon masters in the future, which is why he absolutely has to kill him. The dude changes his attack trajectory, and with the way he is speaking, something important finally crosses Yunseol's mind. However, he quickly filters his mind of all distracting thoughts before he gets himself killed. He blocks the dude's attack, but the reverberation from the sword sends a peculiar sensation through Yunseol's body. After a few more moves, Yunseol finally confirms his suspicion. He remembers he and his grandfather once attended to a corpse, and his grandfather tells him that the dude died at the hands of the 5 tiger-severing blades of the Hebei Feng clan. His grandfather knew this because there wasn't an external wound on the dude, but all of his bones were shattered. Yunseol's grandfather explains that the 5 tiger-severing blades specialize in chi flowing into the opponent whenever their weapons touch each other. Remembering the words of his grandfather, Yunseol speaks out to let the dude know that he is aware that he is currently using the 5 tiger-severing blades technique that is peculiar to the Hebei Feng clan. The dude is shocked when he hears this, and he starts questioning Yunseol about how he knows this. Apparently, one of the characteristics of the fighting form is the absorption technique, which is one of the basic techniques that uses Qi. It is just like a vortex that pulls everything into it, thus using this to mess with their opponent's weapon. While the opponent's weapon is twisted, they use the opportunity to fully take them down. Back then, Yunseol was blown away by how his grandfather explained everything, and he asked his grandfather if the Hebei Feng clan was the most powerful martial arts sect. His grandfather explained that the technique might be dangerous, but at the same time, it is bound to affect them too, since they are going to get close to their opponent. Remembering this, Yunseol decides that he is going to use the technique against the opponent. Yunseol dashes toward the Feng dude, and the guy finally prepares to engage Yunseol, using the clan's way. Feng talks about how he plans to uproot all of the demon seedlings before they get the chance to become demon masters. Just as Unseol is about to reach him, he does something by plunging his sword into the ground. Feng thinks Unseol must be crazy, but he soon realizes that he is on the wrong side when Unseol dodges his attack and appears beside him. Unseol kicks him right in the stomach, causing him pain, while also pushing back. Unseol then returns to pick up his sword while smiling because his plan is clearly working. However, Unseol is not completely relying on what he just did because he could clearly see that it dealt little damage. He is not entirely worried since his opponent has been training for a long time and he doesn't expect to just take him down with cheap tricks. However, he is now glad that he knows how to counter him. While remembering the words of the advanced chamber instructor, the man told him to let the opponent attack first before making his move in a split second. Feng soon makes his move, and instead of panicking and acting recklessly, Unseol decides to go with the flow of the attack with the hope of changing the flow at the last second. Unseol does exactly this and barely misses Feng's head. Feng's life flashes before his very eyes, and this is when he realizes that Unseol is using his own technique to his advantage. Feng doesn't want to believe that this is possible because the energy-absorbing technique that he is using is strong enough to even pull a boulder from a long distance. Apparently, the technique is so strong that even expert swordsmen find it difficult to counter, which is why Feng doesn't want to believe that someone as young as Unseol has what it takes to counter him. Feng then tries another attack, and this time around, he makes the absorption stronger, but unknown to him, he is just going to make Unseol's sword faster. Unseol gets the edge, and just as he is about to cut Feng, Feng dodges the strike because he was already expecting it. He catches Unseol by surprise since he pulled back from using the energy absorption technique. He boastfully tells Unseol that he doesn't need to use the energy absorption technique to kill someone like him. Feng dashes toward Unseol while totally ignoring his absorption technique, but this is what Unseol has been waiting for. The moment Feng gets closer to him, Unseol makes use of the Fire Rain Sword First technique, Shining Mystique, to cut Feng down. Just like Unseol's previous opponents, Feng is left in shock at the type of technique that Unseol just displayed in front of him. It turns out that Unseol changed the Shining Mystique from a defensive technique to an attacking one, and to do this, he had to risk having the other moves go against him. Even Feng is forced to admit that Unseol is brilliant for having changed the way the attack works. Unseol starts working away, and Feng is surprised that Unseol is letting him live. Unseol tells Feng that he is not part of his revenge, which is why he has no reason to kill him. Feng is relieved to hear this, and he suggests that they never meet each other again. Just as Unseol leaves, a strange figure appears behind Feng, who turns out to be a killer demon. Feng asks the demon killer if he is there to take him out, and the demon killer lets him know that he was useful for the Orthodox sect as long as he could. Feng is surprised that the demon killer knows he is from the Orthodox sect, and the demon killer scoffs, telling Feng that he is gravely underestimating the demon palace. With this, the demon killer raises his sword and executes Feng. Meanwhile, Seo Jinha is going up against a bunch of trainees who are from the hellish sect. While fighting them, they have managed to poison him, and because of this, he has lost 95% of his fighting spirit. His enemies let him know that he is just a dead man, walking unless he is able to obtain the antidote from them, which they obviously would not give him. Seo Jinha finally realizes that being alone might not have been the best option because the group he is going up against is too organized. Instead of giving up, Seo Jinha grabs his sword with his left hand, ready to defend himself. One of the assailants makes fun of Jinha, admitting that he might be strong and talented, but there is no way he is going to quickly adapt to using his left hand since he is a right-handed warrior. They suggest that he give up as they dash toward him with the intention of finishing him off. Jinha tries to stand his ground, but to make things work, he gets hit with another poison needle again. With this, Jinha knows he is going to die in 10 minutes if he doesn't get himself the antidote to the poison. Realizing that there is no need to fight again, Jinha finally lets down his sword, waiting to be butchered by the incoming assailants. Suddenly, one of them drops dead before they can reach Jinha, and this is when they realize that there is someone else in the area. They are still trying to understand the situation when Unseol appears behind them, looking all menacing and dangerous. Unseol's swift and surprise attack helps him take down the assailants with precision. In no time, Unseol is the only one standing amidst the number of corpses lying around the field. Fear sets in when Seo Jinha notices Unseol walking toward him, and he tries to convince him to let him live because he is not a threat to him. Unseol just ignores him and walks over to one of the bodies on the ground to search it. It turns out that Unseol is concerned about the antidote, and the moment he sees it, he is relieved because he knows that it would help him when fighting against the trainees from the hellish blood castle. Just as he is about to leave, Seo Jinha stops him, telling him that he has been poisoned, and he has less than 10 minutes to use the antidote. Unseol turns around, and with a cold voice, he lets him know that his aim is to kill everyone, and Seo Jinha is not exempt. Unseol lets him know that the only reason he is not cutting him down is that he is a dead man already. Seo Jinha realizes that Unseol is actually right because, in the end, he is just a competitor who needs to get out of the way. Out of desperation, Jinha tells Unseol that he is ready to work with him if he can give him the antidote. Unseol then asks him why he should help him out, and in his defense, Jinha reminds Unseol that there are about 20 trainees left. He explains that these trainees are all in groups, and no matter how strong Unseol is, he has no chance against them all by himself. Jinha promises to tell Unseol the weaknesses of the remaining group if he helps him. In addition, Jinha promises Unseol that he is never going to betray him if he saves his life. After taking a moment to think about it, Unseol comes to the conclusion that Seo Jinha is not the type to trick people or betray someone. Jinha also assures Unseol that he is going to work with him until the very end, while reiterating the fact that he is not going to betray him. Unseol finally agrees to help, and he throws the antidote canister to Jinha so he can help himself. Jinha wastes no time pouring the powder on the affected part, and while he is doing this, the bell for another restricted area comes on. The moment Unseol hears this, he tells Jinha that they need to leave immediately. Jinha is surprised because they are still in the safe zone, but Unseol screams at him to use his head. He reminds him that most of the battle area has been restricted already, and since another restriction just happened and they are in the safe zone, this can only mean one thing. This basically means that the rest of the group will soon converge on their position. Before he can even finish saying this, the other groups show up, surrounding Jinha and Unseol. Without a doubt, Unseol realizes that they are late already, and while assessing the group that just arrived, he notices that there is a certain dude among them who appears to be different from the rest. The dude has a red scarf tied around his hair, and he has a cold demeanor about him. Since the group is a bunch of different factions, one of them wastes no time suggesting that they kill Unseol and Jinha first before deciding on what to do with each other. It turns out that everyone in the group knows about Jinha and Unseol and the type of skills that they wield. Realizing that they are in a very tight spot, Jinha reaches for the antidote bottle that Unseol gave him earlier. In an act of ingenuity, he throws the powder at the group, claiming that it is poison from the hellish blood castle. The powder leaves a purple dust that covers the entire area and leaves the group members covering their mouths in fear. While the group is trying to deal with what they think is poison, Unseol and Jinha make a run for it. Suddenly, one of the group members catches on to the fact that they have been tricked, and he alerts the rest of the group, telling them that the powder is not poison. Jinha, on the other hand, is glad that the powder actually created what appears to be a smokescreen. Meanwhile, Unseol is already thinking of the next thing to do, and he figures out that a large area is not going to work out for them. He thinks of getting a cave where they will be best suited to fight, and just as if they are working in sync, Jinha can see what he is thinking. Unseol then tells Jinha to follow him because he knows a cave that they can use. Apparently, he is talking about his former living quarters, which provide the best place for them to fight in. Jinha is ultimately impressed when he realizes that Unseol has it all figured out already. Unseol and Jinha continue their advance towards the cave area, but everything turns out badly for them when they see a cloud of smoke covering the area, signaling the fact that the cave area has fallen under a restricted section. The killer demons have the entire place surrounded, giving them no room to breach whatsoever. Unseol figures out that the higher-ups are watching and intentionally picks the area to be a restricted area just so they can see what would happen. Jinha starts to panic, and he asks Unseol what they are supposed to do. Unseol lets him know that the killer demons won't attack them as long as they don't cross the fog. Since they have no choice but to fight, Unseol believes that having their backs against the demon killers might not be a bad choice. Realizing that they have no choice, the two prepare themselves for the battle of their lives. The group chasing them finally shows up, and they are pissed about the fact that Unseol and his partner are stressing them out. Without delaying any further, they rush towards the two, aiming to kill them as fast as possible. Meanwhile, the head instructor is watching from above, and he believes that the battle that is about to ensue will be the deciding battle for the 10 demon masters. Daggers fly towards Unseol, but he easily dodges everything before going after the dude who throws the daggers. He cuts down the dude, and while he is doing this, Jinha is also showing the attackers why he is not on their level. Suddenly, a long-range weapon comes flying at Jinha, forcing him to take a step backwards. The intensity of the long-range weapon forces Jinha and Unseol to stand back-to-back again, leaving their assailants to surround them. Seeing how the situation has turned out, Unseol realizes that he is on the verge of death, and he subtly says he has no regrets, since he has put his all into everything he has done so far. The moment Unseol hears this, he realizes that he and Jinha are on a completely different path because if he dies at that moment, he is going to be filled with the regret of not being able to avenge his grandfather. The reality that this might happen hits him really hard, and he loses every sense of fear and immediately locks in. Unseol switches positions from being the hunted to the hunter, and the first two who are running towards him have no idea what hit them. He cuts them down so fast that he is already onto his next target before Jinha even realizes that Unseol is no longer behind him. Onseol's technique changes as he slashes his opponents like tissue. The other trainees start panicking because they have never seen the type of technique that Yoonseol is wielding. Realizing how dangerous Yoonseol is, the target immediately shifts to him. They focus all of their attention on him, but at this point, all of Yoonseol's senses are on overdrive, especially his wild beast senses. He remembers every move Sawu did, and in that moment, he starts moving erratically. All the trainees can see are bodies flying left and right, while they can't seem to track Yoonseol's movements. Even the head instructor is shocked by what he is staring at, as he cannot believe that a trainee is moving just like a pro. Yoonseol is dealing blows left and right until an unexpected punch comes from nowhere, and Yoonseol only notices it at the last minute. He is able to block the punch with his sword, but failure to prepare ahead causes the punch to shatter his sword before throwing him into the distance. Jinha freaks out when he sees where Yoonseol landed, and he screams at him to stand up. Yoonseol is a bit disoriented from the punch, and by the time he comes back to his senses, he finds himself in the fog. His mouth opens in shock and dismay, and by the time he looks up, he sees a killer demon staring down at him, ready to decapitate him. To everyone's shock, the head instructor screams out an order at the last minute. The killer demon is about to grab Yoonseol when Sawu appears behind him and holds a sword to his neck to let him know that Yoonseol is spared. Yoonseol stares into his master's eyes, and this is the last thing he sees before finally passing out. The head instructor screams at the top of his voice, demanding that they bring out the head physician to prevent Yoonseol from dying. Jin-gak tries telling the head instructor that it is wrong for him to suddenly pause the trial, but the head instructor assures Jin-gak that he is going to take full responsibility. Deep down, the head instructor is rejoicing that he has finally found the kind of jewel that he has been looking for. The head instructor is confident that Onseol will go ahead to become one of the 10 demon masters. Later on, the head instructor was asked by one of the elders, Hua Wimyong, why he disrupted the plan, which was to initially select 10 demon masters and 2 geniuses who would serve as their ears and ears. Apparently their plan was to select 12 trainees, but Onseol ended the trial with 14 trainees even when he knew he was going to be punished for it. The head instructor lets Hua know that he is fully prepared for whatever consequence that comes with his decision. Hua is worried about how the emissaries from the 10 demonic sects will take the news, but the head instructor assures Hua, telling him that the 10 executives would also see what he saw in Yoonseol. Sometime later, Yoonseol wakes up in a strange room with the smell of medicine everywhere. He immediately figures out that he is in the room where his wounds were treated. He assesses his body and realizes that his wounds are perfectly healed, and this includes all of his internal injuries. He is totally impressed by this because he wasn't expecting the physician from the Demon Palace to be so impressive. Once he gathers his strength, he gets on his feet and makes his way to the hallway where he meets an attendant who asks him to come along. He leads Onseol to the main hall, and Yoonseol is totally blown away by the incredible setting of the building. He asks the dude where they are, and he informs him that they are currently in the center of Hell Island. It dawns on Yoonseol that he hasn't seen the building before because it was in the restricted area. Once Onseol makes himself comfortable, the attendant asks him if he would like to order anything, and Yoonseol asks for 2 bowls of noodles. Moments later, the noodles arrived, and the reason he asked for noodles was that he had always enjoyed noodles with his grandfather. Just as he is about to start eating, Jinha shows up, teasing him about the 2 bowls of noodles in his presence. Not ready to be friends, Yoonseol asks Jinha what he wants, and Jinha takes a moment before thanking Yoonseol for saving his life. So Jinha admits that he would have died if not for Yoonseol saving his life. Yoonseol doesn't want to take credit for this, but Jinha explains to him that they were supposed to be 12 surviving trainees. However, the head instructor's decision to suddenly save him is why Jinha is also alive. Yoonseol is shocked to hear this, and he is even more shocked when he hears that he has been out for 4 days. Yoonseol thought he was just out for 1 day, and Jinha let him know that he was pretty lucky that the physician known as the Mad Physician was close by. Talking about the Mad Physician, he is considered the best physician, but after failing to cure his lover's illness, he became mentally unstable. Basically, he is considered a miracle worker who can save anyone as long as they are still breathing. Yoonseol feels honored by the fact that he was saved by the said physician. Without asking, Jinha decides to dig into Yoonseol's noodles while dispersing more information. He mentions that the killer demons are actually martial masters sent over by the 10 demonic sects. Apparently, the sects will be coming to pick their successors too. Yoonseol then asks Jinha if he has any idea why he was saved by the head instructor. Jinha replies that he was just about to ask him the same thing because the head instructor was really eager for Yoonseol to be one of the 10 demon masters. Jinha believes that Yoonseol knows the head instructor before or his sect has something to do with it. Yoonseol then clears the air, saying he didn't know the head instructor before. When Yoonseol hears that the head instructor is being heavily punished for what happened, he starts wondering why a man whom he never knew stepped in to save him and even risked being punished for it. Just then, a loud sound calls everyone's attention to the fact that the executives of the 10 demonic sects have arrived. The trainees immediately gather, and they watch as the aura farming executives enter the room. Without wasting time, the vice master of the necromancer sect, Bulsa, makes his move. He points to a dude named Yang Munho and asks him to join the necromancer sect. Yang is skeptical because he has always trained with a sword and has never held a spear before. Bulsa lets him know that this doesn't matter before he was born with a physique that is suited for the necromancy spear. Bulsa points out that Yang was unable to max out his potential while he was using the sword, and the spear would be the best choice for him. With these words ringing in his head, Yang quickly follows Bulsa. After Bulsa is done, another old man, Jok Yahan, steps up, and he is the vice master of the Hellish Blood Castle. Surprisingly, Jok calls upon Jinha to join the Hellish sect, and this shocks the dude. Jinha can't believe that Jok Yahan is seriously calling on him, who was known as the genius of the sword since he was a kid, to join the Hellish Blood Castle that creates poison artists. Jok explains that the scariest poison in the world is a poisonous heart. Apparently, before the third trial began, Jinha had used a girl from the martial office of the Hellish Castle to kill all the trainees, and after failing, he ended her life to make sure she stays silent forever. Jinha immediately cuts in to defend himself, saying the girl offered first. However, Jok lets Jinha know that he is not trying to blame him whatsoever because he appreciates the fact that Jinha is willing to kill many people to achieve his goals. Jok lets Jinha know that he cannot succeed in the Murim if he thinks that swordsmanship is his path. Jok is able to convince Jinha that his talent lies with the poison and not swordsmanship. After seeing how Onseol handled the sword, even though he just started learning, Jinha is convinced that he might truly not have the talent for swordsmanship. Because of this, he makes up his mind to head to the Hellish Castle, and Jok gladly takes him away. Just then, the strongest swordsman in the demon path, Wee Hyokun, steps forward to make his pick. Wee is the most respected because he is the strongest, and the fact that he is from the Fire Rain Sword sect. Even Unseol can feel the pressure from Wee, and everyone else is on their toes because they are eager to see who he is going to pick. Wee shocks everyone when he calls on Unseol's name, telling him to follow him. Wee says he has heard a lot about Unseol, and because of this, he is excited to see what Unseol can do. Just as Wei turns around to leave, Unseol does the unthinkable by fearlessly voicing out that he is not interested in joining the Fire Rain Sword sect. Wei is forced to ask again just in case he is going deaf. Wei's rage bursts out as he cannot believe that Unseol just rejected a demon master. The aura from his body immediately sends Unseol to his knees, but Unseol manages to speak out, saying he has the choice to reject offers. Wei then asks him where he plans to go after he rejects his offer, and Unseol calmly says he would like to go to the Wandering Beast Pavilion. This only makes Wei even angrier, since the Wandering Beast Pavilion is considered trash and he believes that Unseol is trying to make fun of the Fire Rain sect. Wei continues to pin Unseol down with his terrifying aura, and Unseol finally realizes why he is regarded as the strongest swordsman in the demon path. Suddenly, Unseol feels a sense of relief, and when he looks up, he sees Sawu standing between him and the immeasurable pressure coming from Wei's body. This only makes Wei even angrier because he can't believe that a mere pavilion master is trying to stand in his way. The aura from Wei increases, causing Sawu a bit of discomfort, and he even reaches for his sword. Everyone watching this starts shitting their pants because they can't believe Sawu is really trying to unsheath his sword in front of the strongest man in the demon path. With a stern voice, Wei tells Sawu not to overthink his boundaries because he is close to Jin Gak. One of the vice masters quickly figures out that the trainees would all die if Wei gets mad and unsheathes his sword. He figures out that it is his job to quickly step in and make sure that the situation is diffused. Just as Wei is about to pull out his sword, the said vice master quickly steps in to push the sword back, while speaking to Wei in the most gentle way that he can. It turns out that the vice master is Dan Xian, and he is from the Wandering Beast sect. He urges Wei to let go of the matter just for his sake, and the rest of the elders present in the room subtly urge Wei to exercise patience. Wei takes a moment before finally making his decision, allowing the Wandering Beast sect to take Unseol under their wings. Sawu quickly tells Unseol that it is time for them to leave before Wei changes his mind again. Deep down, Unseol knows the energy he felt, and he can sense the fact that Wei was going to kill him if he hadn't been stopped. After leaving the demon palace, Sawu commends Unseol, saying he has improved, and Unseol heaps praise on Sawu's teachings. Moments later, they arrive at the Wandering Beast Pavilion, which appears to be a lively village. Unseol is shocked when he sees this because he was expecting a silent and serious environment, but everyone looks bright and happy. Dan notices the shock on Unseol's face, and he tells him that they are unlike the other sects because they prioritize self-sufficiency instead. Unseol notices that he can't see young people of his age in the area, and he questions this. Dan casually reveals that the young disciples they had either run away or died. thanks to their intense training. Dan then looks around, and he spots an old shack. He tells Onseol that he will be staying in the shack, and if there is nothing that needs to be fixed in the shack, he asks him to get tools from the blacksmith, Wangul. After telling Unseol where he needs to be, Dan tells Sa-woo that it is time for them to leave. Unseol is surprised that Sa-woo is leaving, and he asks him if he is not staying in the village. Dan then explains that Sa-woo is just a secret pavilion master who has no right or power to stand up against the sword demon. Because he did that to protect Unseol, he is going to be punished for it. Unseol is shocked to hear this, but Sa-woo urges him not to worry himself because it is nothing but a light punishment. Sa-woo livens the mood by slapping Onseol on the back, telling him not to fool around while he is away. After Sa-woo is gone, Dan tells Unseol that he cannot call himself a disciple of the Wandering Beast Pavilion yet. Dan says Unseol might have become one of the 10 demon masters, but this doesn't mean he is officially a disciple of the Wandering Beast Pavilion. The reason for this is that they don't accept weaklings as disciples of the Beast Pavilion. Unseol then asks Dan what is required to be strong, and Dan casually says yes. Dan reveals that the sect doesn't have any stressful formalities like the other sects. Dan says the sect doesn't enforce a sense of belonging or an oath because all that is needed is to learn martial arts and become stronger. By doing this, he will be acknowledged as a disciple, and Dan lets him know that everyone in the pavilion is his mentor. However, it is still up to the masters to teach Unseol what they know or not. The next day, Unseol starts climbing a very tall rock known as the Iron Peak. Dan had told him the day before to climb the rock because there was someone waiting at the top who was going to teach him the best internal energy cultivation techniques. After struggling so hard and sweating gallons, Unseol finally makes it to the top of the mountain. He is blown away when he sees a man who appears to be a monk waiting for him. The aura from the bald-headed man alone is enough to send him tumbling back, but Unseol maintains his cool. He introduces himself to the man and states his business to him, and the man asks him if he is not satisfied with the cultivation technique he has learned already. Unseol is confused when he hears this, and the man reveals that there is true chi emanating from his body. The man says the chi is so much that it appears Unseol has been gathering it since he was young. Unseol quickly clears the air, saying he has lived as a mortician all his life and has never learned any cultivation technique. The moment the bald-headed Saitama hears this, he reveals that there are only two possibilities for what Unseol just said. It's either that Unseol is a liar or he learned it in his dreams. Desperate to clear himself, Unseol tells the man that he is not lying and he is free to check if he is. The man is curious about this, and he asks Unseol if he is free to destroy all of his true chi, to which Unseol says yes. The bald-headed dude takes a look at Unseol's body and he is shocked when he realizes that his body is brimming with true chi. But it is not circulating, which means he collected true ki into his lower dantian without having an energy technique. The bald-headed man doesn't think this phenomenon is possible, and he immediately grabs Unseol closer, asking him fiercely who taught him how to collect true chi. Unseol is confused by the question, forcing him to ask the bald-headed dude what he meant by this. The dude then asks him if anyone has ever taught him how to calm his mind or breathe in the past. Unseol immediately mentions that his grandfather taught him a breathing technique before, and the man asks him to try it in his presence. Unseol gets into position and starts doing the breathing technique, but the bald-headed dude is blown away when he sees this, because Unseol is doing the technique while standing up. After he has seen enough, he tells Unseol to stop and asks him again if his grandfather was the one who taught him. Unseol confirms this, saying he taught him when he used to play dead with him, claiming that it was the best way to breathe in the coffin. The bald dude then tells Unseol that the technique is not just for breathing, but it is also useful for collecting true Kai in the dantian. It is basically a circulation and breathing practice, which is different from the internal energy techniques that would allow one to use the true Qi in their body. The bald dude lets Unseol know that there is already 10 years worth of internal energy in his body. The dude then asks Unseol for his grandfather's name, and Unseol reveals that it is Bu Janyang. The moment he says this, the bald dude lets him know that there is only one person in the Murim with the name, and he was once called the strongest swordsman in the Demon Path. He was also the former vice master of the Demon Palace, but Unseol doesn't want to believe this because there is no way someone as influential as him would become an undertaker. The bald dude then mentions another peculiar detail, saying the breathing technique that Janyang taught Unseol is that of a Shaolin sect. This shocks Unseol because this basically means the technique is from the Orthodox sect, leaving the huge question of whether his father was originally a martial master of the Orthodox sect. Fear creeps through Unseol's body because he knows that if the truth gets out, he is going to lose his title as a demon master in the best-case scenario, but would be killed in the worst-case scenario. The bald dude then urges Unseol not to fret because he doesn't doubt him. He's pretty sure the Demon Palace has done its background check on him, and since they didn't find anything, he is good to go. The bald dude then tells Unseol that he is going to teach him the breathing technique. since he made a promise to the Wandering Beast Pavilion. The bald dude lets Yunsil know that he doesn't really care if he learned orthodox or demonic martial arts. However, he lets him know that if he ever teaches someone else the technique he is about to show him, he is going to kill him and everyone close to him. Without hesitation, Yunsil assures the bald dude that he is up for the task. Realizing that Yunsil is ready, the bald-headed dude introduces himself as Hyol Gumang. Hyol asks Yunsil if he knows the difference between the orthodox and demonic internal energy cultivation techniques, and Yunsil says no. Hyol explains that the orthodox Murim's internal energy cultivation techniques are natural ways to build internal energy in the human body, while the demonic path is hell-bent on using every method necessary to gather internal energy. This is basically why they have a bulk load of internal energy from the start, but the methods they use go against the nature of the human body. However, the orthodox Murim's martial masters end up being superior in the end, thanks to the true chi that they have gathered. Hyol then reveals that the technique he is going to teach Yunsil is out of the bounds of the demonic martial arts. He claims that the cultivation technique is the most excellent and miraculous out of all cultivation techniques. However, gaining such power comes with a price because the process of learning is excruciatingly painful. He mentions that he ate his fingers while he was learning the technique. Apparently, those who can endure such immeasurable pain can attain a body that is in complete sync with internal energy. Hyol comes clean, revealing that he was once a martial master of the Azure Dragon Temple, but he was framed for murder and kicked out with his internal energy sealed. It was in the process of recovering the internal energy that he got help from the Wandering Beast Pavilion, and this is why he promised them that he would teach his internal energy cultivation technique as a way of repaying his debt. Since he would have failed his promise if can't teach Yunsil the technique, Hyol says he would have to test him first. Hyol tells Yunsil that he is going to use his true chi to pierce all 365 of his acupuncture points all at once. He wants to do this to clean his vessels and prepare them to learn the technique. Hyol lets Yunsil know that it is going to be painful, and he urges him to back out if he can't endure it. Yunsil, being the stubborn brat that he is, assures Hyol that he is up for the task. Since he is confident that he can go through with it, Hyol unleashes his true chi into Yunsil's body in an attempt to cleanse him. However, Hyol is struck by something so shocking that he has never seen before. He is expecting Yunsil to be shouting in pain because of how painful the process is, but to his surprise, Yunsil is calm and quiet. This is when it dawns on Hyol that there is no bad smell from any impurities coming out of Yunsil's body, meaning Yunsil doesn't have a drop of tainted energy in his vessels. Hyol is so impressed that he excitedly yells out, telling Yunsil that he is going to teach him his internal energy cultivation technique. 6 months later, Yunsil has gone through severe changes that make him look totally different. He has bulked up and doesn't look like the frail kid that he once was. Hyol picks up a boulder and hurls it at Yunsil. Instead of moving or trying to smash the boulder, Yunsil decides to aura farm, and his aura is so much that he shatters the boulder without making a move. Hyol is impressed by this, and he concludes that Yunsil has mastered the technique. Hyol is blown away by the fact that Yunsil was able to learn the technique in just 6 months. In this period, he has been able to disperse the true chi he had collected inside him after learning the circulation technique. Hyol then suggests that they proceed to the next thing on their plate. Yunsil gets into position to circulate his ki, and he is all thankful that Hyol taught him everything because he was able to reach the first level in no time. Nonetheless, Yunsil still thinks he is lagging behind because the circulation technique has 8 levels, and he wants to reach the second level before leaving the mountain. Powered by his immense determination, Yunsil is able to break through to the next level, shocking Hyol. Hyol cannot believe that Yunsil just broke through to the second level, which is the realm of untainted bone and muscle. This is a level that is meant for max toning of the bones and muscles. However, these sudden changes put so much pressure on the body, and just as expected, Yunsil starts feeling the pain. Blood drips out of his mouth as he grits his teeth, determined to push through to the end. Hyol quickly rushes behind Yunsil to support him. He urges him to maintain a blank mind and focus on his goal. Hyol then notices that Yunsil's body is unable to restrain the true chi because of the sudden changes, and with the way things are going, he is just going to end up with severe internal wounds. Without hesitation, Hyol concludes that he has to use his life force to help Yunsil. He places his hand on Yunsil's back and fires his life essence into him to help him push through. By the time Yunsil is done, he realizes that his body is burning with so much energy, and when he turns around, he sees Hyol straining. Yunsil rushes over to check on him, asking him if he gave him his true ki. Hyol can see that Yunsil is worried, and he urges him not to be because he can't actually leave the Wandering Beast Pavilion until Yunsil has learned properly. Yunsil is shocked to hear this as he realizes that Hyol is actually a caring person, even though he tries to portray the face of a tough guy. Yunsil is very grateful for his help, and he assures the man that he is not going to forget what he has done for him. However, Hyul urges Unseol to forget his existence. Unseol is shocked to hear this because it is the same thing that Sa-woo said to him during the competition. Hyul then tells Unseol that the only way he can repay him is if he learns the breathing technique very well and reaches the 8th level, which is the realm of great origin. Unseol takes a deep breath and assures Hyul that he would reach the stage that he couldn't, because Hyul only made it to the 5th stage. Since Unseol has reached the 2nd stage already, Hyul tells him that he no longer needs his teachings. He tells Unseol that the next thing he needs is the basics of martial arts. Hyul then tells Unseol to climb the cliff at the western edge of the Wandering Beast Pavilion because this is where he is going to train his martial arts. Unseol is grateful for everything and bows to Hyul in gratitude. 3 months after this, one of the sect's proficient squads, the Wind Cloud, returns to the pavilion. The squad returns to the pavilion flying through the rooftops just to show off because apparently they are the best unit out there. The leader of the squad, Baek-yeon, decides to aura farm very well until Dan shows up to welcome him. Baek-yeon slowly removes his face mask while addressing Dan formally. Dan reminds him that he already told him to forget about formalities, but Baek refuses, saying the rules of the pavilion have been stretched thin enough as it is. Baek is glad that Dan showed up because he was aiming to see him. Baek demands to know why Dan brought in one of the 10 demon masters, even though he was against the plan in the first place. Dan then reveals that Unseol was the one who chose the sect because he rejected the Fire Rain sect's offer. Baek is surprised to hear that a youngster chose them. Dan confirms this, saying the decision almost made him fight Wee. Dan then teases Baek, saying he should be proud of Unseol because he chose them. Baek is not entirely pleased, claiming that the decision is why the Fire Rain sect didn't choose any of the 10 demon masters. Baek screams at Dan, reminding him that their sect is under fire from the Demon Palace, and grabbing Unseol under their wings just added more fuel to the fire. Dan smiles when he hears this, reminding Baek that the Wandering Beast Pavilion has never concerned itself with the politics of the Murim because their goal is to master martial arts. Baek is forced to agree with Dan, but he demands to see Unseol because his position as one of the Demon Masters is currently at stake. Meanwhile, Unseol had visited another teacher, Go-wal, who was once known as the Grand Thief, thanks to his technique known as the Swift Phantom. Go-wal boasts of his technique, saying everyone who has tried to learn his technique has become crippled because they could not keep up with the rapid changes. Go-wal believes that Unseol is going to join the list of cripples, but to his shock, Unseol masters the technique in just a month. Even though he is shocked and stunned, Go-wal is also pleased that he has found someone who can inherit his legacy. Because of this, he concludes that he is going to close down his dojo. Go-wal tells Unseol that all that is left for him is to master the rest of the technique himself so he can use it in real-life situations. Later on, Baek and Dan decide to check on Unseol. They stand on a cliff, watching Unseol practicing the Swift Phantom technique. Baek confidently says Unseol has no chance, since the technique is a hard one to master. Baek's mouth is left wide open when he sees the way Unseol is moving, leaving him to ask if Unseol has been practicing the move since he arrived at the pavilion. Dan corrects this, saying Unseol has learned another technique when he joined. It starts to dawn on Baek that the rumor about Unseol learning the Wild Beast Path in 2 weeks is true, and Dan confirms this. Dan mentions that Sa-woo gave Unseol all of his spiritual water, and he believes that this is what helped him to open the transcendental nerve earlier. Baek disagrees, saying the spiritual water alone is not enough to help him master the technique. Dan then mentions that he is in charge of everything at the moment because the Pavilion Master is still in isolation. Baek then mentions that the 10 demonic sects all have an issue with the way the 10 Demon Masters situation has played out so far. Apparently, the real reason they created the 10 Demon Masters program was to nurture prodigies that are capable of killing the Orthodox Masters. Baek confirms this, but says some of the demonic sects were unaware, which is why they sent their successors for the competition. Dan believes that this is not supposed to be an issue, but Baek lets him know that a big problem has arisen from this. It turns out that the White Demon Temple leader's only son, Kang Moryeon, died all thanks to Unseol. Dan doesn't really feel pity for what happened because he believes that it is a skill issue, since they were all aware of the risk attached to the competition. Baek adds that the White Demon Temple is not the only sect after Unseol's life, but the Fire Rain sect is also pissed. Apparently, they are not happy with the fact that Unseol used the unrivaled lightning and thunder technique, and he is not even their disciple. Wai has been calling for disciplinary action because of this, and Xian was even punished by being kicked out of his position. Dan is surprised that they are still aiming to punish Unseol even after they have punished the person who taught him. Baek then reveals that they actually want to test Unseol to see if he is really qualified to be one of the 10 Demon Masters. If he fails to prove himself, he will be stripped of the opportunity to use the sword ever again. The two are still in the middle of this conversation when Unseol leaps over from where he is to join them. Dan commends him for his training so far and then introduces him to Baek. Just as usual, Yunseol bows his head in respect to Baek, and Baek wastes no time opening his mouth, saying there is something he wants to discuss with Yunseol. Dan quickly jumps in, telling Baek to stop because there is no use telling Yunseol. However, Yunseol cuts in, telling the two that he is ready to take responsibility, since it is something that happened because of him. This is when it dawns on the two that Onseol must have heard their discussion. Onseol apologizes if he was too forward, revealing that he was using the Wandering Beast Path's Chi Vibration Mind's Eye. Baek is left in disbelief, forcing him to ask Yunseol if he was also doing that while using movement techniques. Yunseol confirms this, mentioning that he basically followed the vibrations of the water's surface. Baek is ultimately shocked, but Dan is already getting used to the weird things that Yunseol does. Baek is happy that they have a genius among them, and he suggests that they place their faith in him. Dan is shocked to hear that Baek is suggesting that they send Yunseol to the Demon Palace for the test when they are aiming to kill him. Baek argues, saying the Demon Palace only wants to help the White Demon Temple leader feel better, not to kill Onseol. This is basically why they chose the Demon Palace as the site for the test, not the White Demon Temple or the Fire Rain Sword sect. Baek lets Dan know that things would only get progressively worse if he rejects the request. The two are still arguing among themselves when Yunseol cuts in, saying he is ready to go. Yunseol says that since they are looking to improve their image, killing him would only make it worse. In addition, Yunseol says he is a proud disciple of the Wandering Beast Pavilion, and he is not looking to avoid any fight that comes his way. Baek agrees with Yunseol, telling Dan that this is the only way they can avoid getting bothered in the future. Dan finds himself backed into a corner, and he is forced to agree. However, he tells Yunseol that if he manages to pass the test, he must make sure to get the aggrieved sex to promise to overlook what has happened in the past. With everyone in agreement, Yunseol heads to the Demon Palace, and while entering the gate, he realizes that things have changed a lot compared to the first time he walked through the same gates. One of the attendants led him to the Grand Hall of the Demon Palace and informed him that he was going to be attended to by another person once he was inside the hall. Yunseol stares directly into the Grand Hall of the Demon Palace, which is in charge of all administrative matters in the Demon Palace. It is basically the General Strategist's Pavilion in the Murim Alliance, and it is where he is going to take the test to prove that he is worthy. Onseol steps into the hall, where he is introduced to the Grand Hall's master, Baek Jeoncheon. The moment Jeoncheon sets his eyes on Onseol, he compliments his ki because he has heard so much about it. Jeoncheon then asks Onseol if he is aware of why he had to come and the rift between the 10 demonic sects. Onseol is forced to ask the man if the Demon Palace and the 10 demonic sects are separate entities. When Onseol asks this, Jeoncheon realizes that the Wandering Beast Pavilion didn't explain the situation to Onseol. Jeoncheon then explains that the Demon Palace is a union of the demonic path sects, which comprises the 10 demonic sects. Although the two can't be separated, they still can't be considered as one entity. Jeoncheon says someone from one of the demonic sects is usually chosen to become the Demon Palace Master, but the former Palace Master wasn't. He then adds that not all of the demonic paths are on good terms with the Demon Palace. Yunseol finally understands the situation, and this is the fact that the two entities are just cooperative, but there are loads of demonic path sects that hate the Demon Palace. Jeoncheon comes clean, saying the 10 Demon Masters' plan wasn't meant to pick the successors for the 10 demonic sects, but to nurture talents who will terminate the orthodox martial masters. To put it simply, the 10 Demon Masters competition was the Demon Palace's plan to wipe out the higher-ups of the orthodox Murim Alliance. Apparently, the 10 demonic sects initially rejected the plan, but the Demon Palace continued to pressure them until they had no choice but to send their disciples. However, some of the disciples died during the competition, and it is because of Yunseol that the Demon Palace has found itself in an awkward position. Jeoncheon reveals that he invited Yunseol to punish him under the guise that he is taking an exam. He asks Onseol if he is aware of this fact, and Yunseol says yes. Jeoncheon is pleased to hear that Yunseol came prepared for the exam, and after talking for so long, Jeoncheon suggests that they get right to the point. Jeoncheon mentions that the White Demon Temple and the Fire Rain sect have both done Onseol a favor by granting him access to the 10,000 Demonic Truth Pavilion. Apparently, it is a hall filled with archives that Yunseol can check out, and Jeoncheon hands him a golden plaque that will give him access to the hall. It turns out that there are 3 floors in the hall, and the plaque allows him to enter the first floor, which is the lowest of all floors. However, even the said hall has about 25,000 different books of martial arts, which Jeoncheon believes will be a great advantage for Onseol. They are basically doing Onseol this favor because there is a very low chance of him passing the exam, so they are trying to make sure no one says anything bad about them. After telling him all of these, Jeoncheon tells him that the exam is for him to endure 5 attacks from a martial master chosen specifically by the White Demon Temple. Jeoncheon reveals that the head instructor actually let go of his position to make sure that Yunseol went through in the competition. When Jeoncheon asked him why he did this, he simply replied that Jeoncheon would see very soon. Since the exam is coming up, Jeonshon says he is expecting to see what the head instructor meant by this. After receiving the plaque, Eunseol steps into the lobby, and this is when he runs into Jin-gak. Eunseol is surprised to see Jin-gak in the Demon Palace, and Jin-gak explains that he has a lot of connections inside the Grand Hall. Basically, he was the head instructor's assistant on Hell Island because he was substituting for the Grand Hall's master, who was absent during the time of the competition. Jin-gak then spots the plaque in Eunseol's hand, prompting him to ask if he is visiting the Truth Pavilion for the exam. Eunseol confirms this, and because Eunseol was once his student, Jin-gak decides to give him one piece of advice. Jin-gak lets him know that the Jianghu is a dangerous place, and there is no kind gesture that is done without a reason. Jin-gak says there is always some kind of ill intention or scheme behind everything. After he is done saying this, Jin-gak tells Eunseol that he is trusting him to find an opportunity, even in the midst of danger. He also adds that trees grow from their roots, which is basically speaking in parables. Eunseol thanks Jin-gak for the advice, and Jin lets him know that he is rooting for him. Moments later, Eunseol arrives at the 10,000 Demonic Truth Pavilion, which is a very large structure. Upon entering, Eunseol can see that the library is not a regular one, and he is blown away by the fact that all of the books in the room are martial arts techniques. After walking through for a couple of minutes, Eunseol could see that it was really a trap. Even though the entire room is filled with secret martial arts, they are not something he can learn in the space of one day. If he tries doing this, he is just going to end up wasting his time, and he is pretty sure that this is what his ops wants. Realizing that the Fire Rain sect and the White Demon Temple are trying to mess with his concentration, Eunseol figures out that it is his job to remain focused and steadfast. Just then, Eunseol remembers what Jin-gak said about trees growing from their roots, and it suddenly dawns on him what he is supposed to do. Eunseol starts running around the building until he finally finds a book on the Wandering Beast reversal technique, which is a book from the Wandering Beast Pavilion. Eunseol excitedly opens the book, but he is shocked by what he finds inside. After his grace is finally over, the day of the exam finally arrives. Eunseol steps into the exam arena where he is addressed by an elder, Gok Gyobong, the supervisor for the exam. There is also Yu Eunseong present on the scene, and he is from the Fire Rain Sword sect. There is also a representative from the Wandering Beast Pavilion, Nyong-gak, and the last person is Go Gunpyeong, who is from the White Demon Temple. Gok tells Eunseol that the White Temple wishes to test his capabilities as one of the 10 demon masters. Gok then turns to the representatives of the Fire Rain sect and the White Demon Temple to ask them if they are going to let go of their grudges if Eunseol manages to pass the test. The two representatives excitedly tell Gok that they are never going to bring back the past if Eunseol survives the test. Since they are in agreement, Gok declares the test open. Go walks into the arena and tells Eunseol that he is expected to endure or block 5 moves from him. Before coming for the exam, Go had been given explicit orders to kill Eunseol. However, Go is empathic towards the Wandering Beast Pavilion's image, and because of this, he plans to relieve Eunseol of his arms on the 5th move. Go then makes his move, and Eunseol is blown away by the fact that Go just launched his attack without having to prepare, which shows how skilled the dude is. The attack aims straight for Eunseol, but he is able to jump backwards, ultimately dodging the first move. Without wasting time, Go makes his next move, and Eunseol soon finds himself being targeted by loads of branched attacks, forcing him to run through the arena just to try and dodge the move. Go is impressed that Eunseol was able to see through the move, which is thanks to his wild beast senses. However, Go lets him know that he is not in the clear, yet. Before Eunseol knows it, the 3rd move is already on him, and this one appears like the rain. The entire arena is covered with attacks meant to take him down. Because Eunseol is confused about what's real or not, he figures out that dodging everything would be better for him. Without hesitation, he kicks into overdrive in an attempt to dodge the attack. The attack finally hits, leaving a loud explosion. But when the dust settles, Go is shocked to see Eunseol standing with just a slight cut to his cheek. It turns out that Eunseol was able to dodge everything thanks to the swift phantom technique. Eunseol knows that he would have died if Go meant to kill him right after the attack landed. Go, on the other hand, is disappointed that he was not able to hit Eunseol as much as he wanted to, and with the way things are going, he might not be able to cut off his arms. Go then decides to get more serious as he cooks up the 4th move, the White Demon Heart Strike. The attack looks like a flash of light, leaving Eunseol isolated and scared that he doesn't have what it takes to dodge the attack. Without a doubt, Eunseol is pretty sure that he is going to die if he fails to dodge the attack. Eunseol then remembers the martial arts book that he found in the pavilion. He was shocked when he opened to see the book only to find out that the first few pages are dedicated to trash-talking the Wandering Beast Pavilion. However, the latter parts of the book detail the weaknesses of the Wandering Beast path. Eunseol figures out that the insults were in the beginning to make sure that only the disciples of the Wandering Beast path read it. Inside the book, Eunseol learns that as a martial artist, he is expected to use his senses and think. He is also expected to amplify the said senses when it is needed. Now that Eunseol is in a dire situation, he follows the instructions of the books to amplify his senses just at the last minute. With this, he is able to dodge the White Demon Heart Strike technique, leaving everyone shocked right where they are. Go cannot believe what he is witnessing because even the martial masters of the White Demon Temple struggle to dodge the said attack. Go finally realizes why the Fire Rain sect and the White Demon Temple wanted Eunseol gone. He has also seen that Eunseol would only grow up to be a thorn in their flesh, and because of this, Go finally decides that Eunseol needs to be eliminated. Go decides to use the very powerful technique White Demon Divine Serpent as his 5th move, aiming to kill Eunseol once and for all. Eunseol initially dodges the strike, but before he knows it, he realizes that the weapon is actually following him with the strong intent to send him to the afterlife. Apparently, the White Demon Divine Serpent is a very dangerous weapon because it doesn't stop until it sheds blood. With this in mind, Go is pretty sure that Eunseol is about to lose his head. Realizing that he can't escape the attack, Eunseol resorts to the use of the unrivaled lightning and thunder technique. Eunseol holds his hand as the attack hits, leaving a bright golden flash. However, this is still not enough to repel the attack, and after holding on for a few seconds, the serpent finally forces his way through, piercing Eunseol's shoulder. The force from this sends Eunseol flying into the distance, but he refuses to fall on his back. He crashes to his knees, and even though his right arm has lost mobility, Eunseol grabs his sword with his left hand. Eunseol raises his head, and he looks intimidatingly dangerous as he showcases his will to continue the fight. Go is impressed, and at the same time, he is scared that Eunseol will go ahead to cause them problems in the future. Because of this, he decides that it is in their best interest to take Eunseol out of the picture. Just as he is about to cook up another move, the representative from the Wandering Beast Pavilion grabs his arm, reminding him that he has exhausted the 5 moves he was given already. Go snatches his hand from Gak, trying to act all pissed off because he touched him. However, Gak responds with a fierce look, assuring Go that he has no obligation to honor the deal he made with the Demon Palace if Go is trying to be dishonorable. Just then, the representative from the Fire Rain sect cuts in, saying Eunseol used a technique from his sect during the test. He suggests that they nullify the test because of this, since this was their complaint in the first place. Gak immediately speaks up, telling the dude that he is already testing the waters because there is no condition where they said Eunseol cannot use the unrivaled lightning and thunder technique. Gak then adds that Xion would have been proud that Eunseol even used the technique. The representative is pissed when he hears this, as he believes that Gak is trying to ridicule his sect. Gak clears the air, saying, Go just used the most powerful technique of the White Demon Arts, but Eunseol was able to repel it, using the unrivaled thunder technique. Gak says the only explanation for this is that the Fire Rain technique is superior to that of the White Demon Temple. The moment he says this, Gak immediately creates a rift between the Fire Rain sect and the White Demon Temple, since the Fire Rain sect cannot let go of an opportunity that crowns them as the superior sect. Because of this, the Fire Rain sect has no choice but to back off. Gak then informs everyone that the promise that was made will be honored. He declares that Eunseol has now regained his title as one of the 10 Demon Masters, and he is also allowed to use the sword. After the declaration, Gak turns to Eunseol's direction to tell him that he has proven himself. Just then, he notices how Eunseol is staring at him. Gak goes close to help him rest up, and he realizes that Eunseol had already fainted while he was still standing. Soon afterward, Eunseol wakes up in a strange room again. He is shocked to see this, and he wonders why he keeps waking up in exclusive rooms. He then remembers the test, and he is worried that he might fail. He wonders what would happen if he fails the test. Since the situation is currently out of his control, he decides to sit down and circulate his chi in the meantime. While doing this, he realizes that he has a bulk load of true chi in his body, and he remembers Hyol's words telling him that he has 10 years worth of true chi in his system. Apparently, the chi would be more accessible when his acupoint is activated, and with what he is feeling inside him, he believes that the test has activated his acupoint. Before he realizes it, Eunseol reaches the 3rd level of the reverse polarity cultivation technique, which is the realm that provides invulnerability to fire and water. Eunseol is in the middle of this when an attendant enters the room, and she tells him that he is currently in the Demon Gathering Pavilion. Basically, this is where the Elder Pavilion Master lives. Eunseol is shocked when he hears this, as he was expecting to have found himself in a medicinal hall, not the Elder Pavilion. Eunseol starts trembling because he knows just how important and crazy the Elder Pavilion is. He is known as the Blood Demon, and he is one of the 3 demons and 3 venerables, who sits at the peak of martial arts. The attendant then introduces herself, saying she is Jin Seol, and the elder has asked her to bring Eunseol to the inner hall. Eunseol is even more concerned when he hears this, and Seol lets him know that the elder is waiting for him in the inner hall. On their way to the inner hall, they move through a beautiful garden that leaves Eunseol mesmerized. He finally arrives at the inner hall where the elder is waiting for him. The elder serves him tea before congratulating him on passing the test from the Fire Rain sect and the White Demon Temple. Yunseol thanks the elder for his goodwill, and after drinking the tea, the elder asks him how the tea tastes. Yunseol answers honestly, saying he is not well versed in the tea business, so he can't particularly say this is how it feels. The elder wants to know more about Yunseol, but before proceeding, he introduces himself as Bung. Yunseol is left in awe because he can't believe he is sitting in front of the demon who swept through the Jianghu to kill countless orthodox martial masters. Yunseol knows that he might not have recognized the old man if he had not heard about him before. After Yunseol is done offering his greetings, the old man says he is a bit different from what he has heard. Even though Yunseol learned martial arts very late, his muscles and joints are actually flexible. In addition, he has good inner energy, and Yunseol explains that his grandfather taught him how to breathe properly while growing up. Bung then tells Yunseol that he brought him to his quarters instead of the medicinal hall because he would like to speak with him in private. Bung then makes a very serious offer, telling Yunseol that he would like him to come to the Demon Palace after he is done training in the Wandering Beast Pavilion. Bung says the Wandering Beast Pavilion might be part of the demonic sects, but they have a system that doesn't align with the other sects. Bung lets Yunseol know that after 3 years of coming to the Demon Palace, Bung is going to meet with the Demon Palace Master to induct Yunseol as a member of the Dark Heaven Squad. This is a big offer because the Dark Heaven Squad is the most elite squad in the Demon Palace, alongside the Heaven Slaying Squad and the Soul Annihilation Squad. Bung says the moment he joins the Dark Heaven Squad, his journey to become one of the higher-ups in the Demon Palace is already set. Bung then asks Yunseol what he thinks of the offer, and without even thinking for a minute, Yunseol rejects the offer, forcing Bung to ask him why this is. With a calm voice, Yunseol explains that learning the martial arts of the Wandering Beast Pavilion requires him to risk his life, and if there is a position guaranteed to him before he even starts, he is going to become complacent. Bung hears this and bursts into laughter, saying he absolutely loves Yunseol's response. Bung mentions Yunseol has the type of attitude that a martial artist is supposed to have. Just from laughing alone, Bung is emitting such strong waves that Yunseol can feel his insides twisting. Bung then tells Yunseol that he will continue watching him because he wants to see how much he will grow in the next 3 years. Bung tells Yunseol that he is going to see him again in the next 3 years, and Yunseol quickly figures out that Bung is already dismissing him. Yunseol thanks Bung for his time and then leaves. After he is gone, one of the masters appears from behind, telling Bung that this is the first time he will see someone reject such an offer. Bung smiles, telling the master that they have to keep an eye on Yunseol to see which side he later chooses. After making it to a safe distance, Yunseol finally gets to breathe, and he realizes that he almost died just from being in the elder's presence. Yunseol knows that he would have been dead meat if he had made a stupid mistake when he was in the old man's presence. Yunseol is still battling with the repercussions of his meeting with the old man when someone taps him from behind, asking him if he is fine. This is when it finally dawns on Yunseol that he has made it into town already. He looks around to reel in the peaceful energy that has been missing in his life for a very long time. Yunseol realizes that he has gotten himself mixed up with a life he never thought he would. Suddenly, he realizes that he is being tailed, and his first instinct is to get himself a weapon. He proceeds to a weapons shop and tells the attendant that he wants a weapon that he can just use for practice. The man then points Yunseol to a bunch of weapons sitting in the corner, telling him to make his choice. Yunseol picks the one that suits him and then makes his way to a secluded area outside town. Once he figures out that he is where he can properly react, he tells whoever is following him to make themselves seen. Just then, a bunch of martial artists dressed as ninjas emerge from the bush, commending Yunseol for having such sharp senses. Yunseol soon finds himself surrounded, and the leader of the elimination team tells Yunseol that they are there to kill him before he finishes his training. Acting cool as ever, Yunseol tells the assassins that he doesn't know them, but he has no interest in killing them, so he urges them to leave. The assassins reply boldly, telling Yunseol that he is the one who is about to die. Since the assassins won't budge, Yunseol decides to speak the only language that they understand, which is violence. He unsheathes his sword, but the assassins still believe he has no chance against them. The assassins immediately get into formation, and Yunseol finds himself surrounded with a plan to attack him at once. Yunseol decides not to act rashly, and before he knows it, they are all over him, trying to get his head off his neck. Yunseol manages to block the first wave of attack, and he figures out that the assassins have a tight attack coordination without any rest in between. He easily figures out that the team has been working together for a long time, which is why their attacks are synchronized. Even though their teamwork is amazing, Yunseol has been able to deduce something thanks to the wild beast's senses. He realizes that they don't have a uniform skill set, and there are gaps between their skill sets. He believes that he can use this against them, and this is what he does without hesitation. Before they know it, he takes down one of them, shocking the assassins, who were not expecting Yunseol to figure out their attack pattern. Apparently, they are from the Wundang sect and believe that their pattern should be out of Yunseol's reach. The assassins start wondering if the Demon Palace has started teaching the demonic masters how to break the orthodox formations. Refusing to give up, the leader of the team screams out, telling his soldiers to assume the third formation. Unknown to them, Onseol is not tracking them with their formation or patterns, but the difference in their skills. They charge at him, but just like before, Onseol cuts down 2 dudes. At this point, the assassins start panicking because they don't expect Onseol to know greater sword techniques. Onseol then clears the air, telling them that he is not using martial arts against them. He lets them know that what they are looking at is his struggle to survive. Onseol adds that the assassins are losing because they were so confident that they were superior to him, but he, on the other hand, is fighting for his life at stake. The leader of the elimination team starts shaking because he has always had the feeling that they were the predator. But Onseol has changed things up. They have essentially become the prey while Onseol is now the one hunting them. Realizing that Onseol is the devil they don't want to mess with, one of the assassins suggests that they retreat and gather their strength. This makes his partner mad and he cuts him down, claiming that the dude is a coward with no honor. Onseol then asks the assassin leader if honor is more important to him than his own life. In his defense, he claims that they are not wielding the sword for personal glory like the demonic sect. He maintains the fact that they fight for honor, and this makes Onseol pretty mad. He remembers his father in the coffin, and he goes after the assassins harder than before. Onseol moved so fast that the assassin leader only saw him after he was done skewering him and his teammates. The assassin crashes to the ground and talks about how Onseol has become one of the demons. He starts saying trash like cursing Onseol in the afterlife, but Onseol doesn't care because they are the ones lying in the dirt, not him. Onseol is surprised that he is forced to kill people even after he has left Hell Island. This basically tells him that he is trapped in an environment of violence, and there is no escape for him. However, he is not worried because he considers this a price that he has to pay for walking the path of vengeance. Just then, a carriage arrives on the scene, and Beck steps out from inside the carriage, looking pleased by what he is staring at. Onseol is shocked by Beck's arrival, wondering how he was able to track him down, but Beck pats him on the shoulder, telling him that tracking him down was pretty easy. Beck then walks over to one of the bodies and immediately realizes that they have a big issue on their hands. However, he suggests that they return to the Wandering Beast Pavilion in the meantime. When they return home, Dan commends Onseol, telling him that he is proud of him because he already heard what happened. Dan believes that the test was difficult, and Onseol confirms this, saying he was treated at the Elder Pavilion Master's residence. Beck and Dan are shocked to hear this because meeting the Elder Pavilion Master is no joke. However, Dan finally realizes why the Fire Rain Sword sect and the White Demon Temple acknowledge the results without argument. Onseol is surprised to hear this, and he asks Dan if the Elder Pavilion Master's position is a big deal. Dan then explains to him that the Demon Palace has the Demon Palace Master, the Elder Pavilion, and the 10 demonic sects, thus splitting the power 3 ways. Beck mentions that the Elder Pavilion has a lot of power because it has all of the former generation's martial masters, and in addition, the Elder Pavilion Master, Jokbung, has been secretly building his own forces. Dan lets Onseol know that he did pretty well in the test, which is why Bung asked to see him. Onseol finally understands how big a deal the dude is. Dan then asks him if there is something else he wants to report, and Beck cuts in, telling Dan that there was an ambush. Dan hears this and immediately flares up in anger because he can't believe that someone tried to harm their disciple. Beck tells Dan that, considering the weapons that they have, they are the General Strategist's subordinate squad. He believes that it is either the Autumn Wind Squad or the Flying Cloud Squad. Dan realizes that they were planning on blaming the General Strategist if things went wrong, but at the same time, Dan is not impressed that they are going after a child who just joined the Wandering Beast Pavilion. Beck tells Dan that it is possible that they are going after Onseol because there have been reports that he is a talented boy. Since they believe Onseol will become a problem in the future, they figured out that it would be better if they killed him before he got stronger. Dan is surprised that Onseol hasn't even learned martial arts properly, but the 10 demonic sects, the Elder Pavilion, and even the Murim Alliance are now paying attention to him. Even though it is risky, Dan believes that this will help Onseol to grow stronger. Onseol then tells Dan that he has a request, and Dan tells him to come forward with his request. Onseol mentions that he heard that the Founding Divine Squad is a group that eliminates those who try to bring harm to the Wandering Beast Pavilion, and because of this, he would like to join them so he can learn martial arts through real experience. Beck is shocked when he hears this because the said group is full of the roughest and most aggressive people in the pavilion. Beck says the leader of the group, So Jion, is known for being very bad-tempered. Beck claims that she has killed disciples of the Wandering Beast Pavilion whom she deemed unworthy, under the guise of testing them. Surprisingly, Onseol tells them that he doesn't mind because even if he dies, it basically means he is not good enough. Onseol tells them that he would like to take the rough route so he can grow as fast as possible. He mentions that he wants to experience real battles and watch martial masters fight in real situations. Beck doesn't want this, but surprisingly Dan is ready to follow Eunseol's suggestion. He tells Beck that he would like to trust Eunseol because it appears that he is very confident. Apparently, the next mission for the squad is the Wind Thunder Valley, and Dan believes that it would be the perfect mission for Eunseol as a temporary member. Beck still wants to argue about this, but he decides to lay off since Dan is not ready to change his mind. He reluctantly tells Dan that he is going to tell Jeon about the decision. Later on, Beck meets Jeon at the Thousand Success Inn to tell her Dan's decision to add Eunseol to her team. She is shocked to hear this, and she immediately rejects the proposal, saying she is not a babysitter. Beck tells the lady that the decision is a direct order from the Vice Pavilion Master, and Jeon decides to meet Dan to reject the decision right to his face. However, Beck whips out a plaque, which is the Heavenly Wolf plaque, a symbol of the Vice Pavilion Master. Without a doubt, Jeon already knows what this means, and she frustratingly smacks the table. Beck tells Jeon that she has the wrong idea about Eunseol because he is a talented kid who overcame the Fire Rain Sword Sect and the White Demon Temple's test. Even with Beck's confidence, Jeon still thinks that Beck and Dan have it all wrong. However, she decides that she is going to take Eunseol only because she wants to test him to see if he is worthy of becoming a disciple of the Wandering Beast Pavilion. Talking about the Wind Thunder Valley, they are a sect born from heresy, and their own way of life is training martial arts through body modification and strength physique arts. Because of this, they engage in human trafficking, which is why both the orthodox and unorthodox sects don't want anything to do with them. However, the reason they have managed to survive up until this point is because the valley itself is a fortress gifted by the gods. This is basically why the Wandering Beast Pavilion's founding divine squad is hesitant about the mission. Nonetheless, they have no choice but to take the mission, and when they arrive at the bridge that leads to the valley, Jeon is surprised to see that it is even worse than anticipated. One of the team members tells her that the real problem is the wind because it is too strong for them to safely cross over. In addition to this, there are guards on the other side, and if they show themselves, the guards inside will immediately cut off the bridge. Jeon cannot believe that she has this hard mission to sort out, and she would still have to babysit Eunseol. Jeon then asks her vice, Jae-woon, if he can do something about their problem, and he offers to try. Jae-woon brings out throwing knives, and after some weird hand signal, he hurls the knives directly at the guard station, which is located far across the bridge. The knife goes through the small ventilation hole at the top of the building, ultimately taking out the guard stationed in the house. Eunseol is blown away when he sees this because it might appear like an easy skill, but what he just witnessed is the body blade union, which he learned in the Fire Rain Sword Sect. With this, Eunseol realizes that Jae-woon is really skilled. They ask Jae-woon if what he did worked, and he confirms this, but says he would have to look around a bit more because there might be a hidden device on the bridge. Since Jeon is looking to prevent her squad members from dying, she decides to place the burden on Eunseol. She tells Eunseol to cross the bridge first, and he agrees without arguing. As he steps closer to the bridge, Eunseol realizes that the wind activity is really strong, and this would prevent him from maintaining balance. He figures out that he would have to use the absorption technique to plant his feet on the bridge. Eunseol starts with this, impressing Jae-woon and the other members, but Jeon doesn't see anything impressive in what Eunseol is doing because she doesn't want to. Suddenly, they hear a terrifying sound, and this is the sound of a trap activating. A device installed at the other end of the bridge suddenly unleashed projectiles at Eunseol, putting him in a precarious position. Using a cool head, Eunseol leaps into the air to dodge the projectiles, and he does something even more amazing by jumping higher while he is already in the air, pushing himself upward with one leg acting as a springboard. Jae-woon is shocked when he sees this because what Eunseol just used is a qigong technique where one hits the top of their foot to jump once more in the air. Jae-woon didn't believe that Eunseol would do this to be able to avoid the trap. However, it doesn't appear that Eunseol will be able to dodge the next attack that is coming for him, and the squad members already believe that he is done for. Just as the attack is about to reach him, he activates the Swift Phantom skill and dashes toward the end of the bridge. He manages to land on the other side, shocking the squad members. Eunseol then runs into the guard station, where he finds the two guards Jae-woon killed earlier. He looks around for the device controlling the trap, and he manages to find it. Without hesitation, he pulls the lever to deactivate the trap, and after doing this, he returns outside to tell the squad that they can now cross over because he has turned off the trap. Jae-woon and Jeon are both shocked when they see this because Eunseol was able to use a skill that is capable of destroying one's legs if there is a tiny mistake. Even Jeon has no choice but to start wondering just what type of person Eunseol is. After gaining access to the valley, they make their way through an alley, and Jae-woon commends Eunseol, telling him that his footwork was amazing. Eunseol thanks him for the compliment, and he asks him if he learned this from Master Go. Eunseol confirms this, but Jeon cuts in, telling Jae-woon not to overpraise Eunseol because he didn't do anything special. Jae-woon urges Eunseol not to mind Jeon because she is just like that. Unknown to them, John was actually surprised by how Unseol navigated his way through danger earlier, but she doesn't think this is enough for him to pass her test just yet. Deep down, John is hell-bent on proving that Unseol is trash. Moments later, they arrive at a lake, and John is the first to dive in without any explanation. Unseol is utterly confused when he sees this, forcing him to ask one of the squad members what it is that they are doing. It then dawns on the dude that Unseol didn't get the memo because he joined the mission at the last minute. The dude explains that the lake is connected to the Wind Thunder Valley, and if they dive in and go out through the tunnel, they are going to reach their destination. However, the lake is filled with ice properties, and because of how dangerous the freezing nature is, one must always use their internal energy for about 15 minutes to protect the body from the cold. He lets him know that failure to do this means immediate freezing and ultimately sinking to the bottom of the lake. The dude tells Unseol that he is free to wait for them right there because the kind of technique to keep his body active in the water might be impossible for his age. He continues by saying merely attempting is wishing for death, but Unseol cuts in, telling him that he doesn't have to worry himself. Unseol doesn't mind doing this because this is why he came on the mission in the first place. Without hesitation, he takes a deep breath and dives into the water. To his surprise, there are so many ice crystals sitting in the lake, and he finally understands what the dude is talking about. He then notices that something is quite off because the others are struggling, and this might be a sign that the ice crystals have some sort of effect. Unseol is surprised that he is not using his internal energy, but at the same time, he is not even feeling cold. It then dawns on Unseol that he might not be feeling anything because he recently reached the realm of invulnerability to fire and water. Unseol admits that he didn't really think too much about the skill when he obtained it, but it is already coming in clutch. Unseol pushes through the cold water, and when he emerges on the other side, he finds the squad sitting and circulating their ki. Unseol, on the other hand, felt nothing, and he just walked up to them normally, shocking the squad. What is going through their minds is how Unseol was able to pull through without feeling anything. Even Jeon cannot believe that Unseol doesn't need any ki circulation because his internal energy is very stable, and she starts to realize that Dan might have sent Unseol to them for a reason. Nonetheless, John can't wait to see what Unseol has in him because the real test is just about to begin. Once everyone has recovered, John tells them that it is time to go. She motivates the team, telling them that their target is right in front of them and it is time to show them the power of the founding Divine Squad. The squad reacts to this pretty well, and moments later, a battle ensues between the squad and the enemy. The enemies have their shirts off as if they were maniacs, and dark veins run through their bodies, making them look even scarier. One of the enemies lunges at Unseol, trying to get his sword off his hands, but Unseol fights back, cutting the dude on the chest. The dude screams in pain but suddenly gets back into a fighting position with a smile on his face. He angrily swings his fist at Unseol, forcing him to dodge. It turns out that the enemies are called the Power-Seizing Demon, and they are basically a product of drugs and physical enhancements. They basically can't feel pain, and no matter how injured they are, they just keep attacking. This leaves Unseol wondering how he is supposed to fight someone like this. John soon notices that Unseol is confused about what to do, and she screams at him to stay in the rear because he is getting in the way. Unseol follows her orders, and while staying behind, he sees just how powerful and ruthless she is in taking down the enemies. It then dawns on Unseol that he is actually there to learn from the martial masters in real situations, and he decides that from that moment forward, he is going to observe the techniques being used by his seniors so he can make everything his own. While he is busy observing, one of the enemies comes straight at him, but Unseol relies on dodging instead. He figures out that it is better for him to remain neutral so as not to tip the balance of the fight since his squad is currently winning the battle. Unseol concludes that this is just a moment for him to watch the founding Divine Squad members and learn from them. Unseol watches as John easily decapitates her enemies with her large blade. He is impressed that John is doing this with just one attack, but he doesn't know how she is doing it because it is obviously different from a normal blade technique. Unseol sees it as more of a sword technique because it contains a lot of stabbing and twisting moves. Moments later, Unseol realizes that he might have gotten it all wrong, and he decides to watch her more to see what she is doing. Just then, an enemy dashes toward Unseol, and following what he just copied from Jeon, Unseol cuts down the demon like Jeon did. He realizes that it is not a set blade technique, but a skill where one has to change to counter the enemy's attack. Apparently, once a sword technique reaches a certain level of mastery, it is not restricted by forms and moves, and at that level, one is able to create an excellent sword technique with just the posture of the sword wielding. Unseol figures out that Jeon isn't actually using a sword technique, but focusing on the flaws of the demons and taking them down according to that. Unseol then decides to utilize what he just learned from Jeon, and Jeon soon notices that Unseol is trying to imitate her. Unseol closes his eyes, takes a deep breath, and waits for the enemy to rush toward him. Once the enemy is close enough, he delivers slashes to the enemy's body, but immediately realizes that the best he can do at the moment is 2 slashes, unlike John, who can easily operate on the level of 9 slashes. John sees this, and she is shocked to see that Onseol was able to create the 1 attack, 2 slashes technique just by watching her. John cannot believe that Onseol was able to do something that took her 2 years to learn. Onseol, on the other hand, has figured out that he can't do more than 2 slashes, but at the same time, he already knows how it works. Since he has figured out John's technique, he decides to watch Jae-woon fight. Even Jae-woon notices that Onseol has diverted his attention toward him after watching the squad leader fight. Jae-woon is confident that Yoon-seol won't be able to copy his martial arts because it is unlike that of the squad leader, which is fundamentally built on the beast path. Jae-woon is confident that he has nothing to worry about because he uses flying daggers, and there is no way Onseol is copying this just by watching him for a bit. To show off a bit, Jae-woon takes on multiple enemies and systematically cuts them into bits just to show Onseol that he doesn't have what it takes to copy his martial arts. Suddenly he turns around to see Onseol taking down enemies, using the same style he just displayed. Instead of holding flying daggers in the other hand, Onseol holds a wooden sword, and it turns out that the dual-wielding mind art allows one to use different martial arts with each hand. Jae-woon is totally blown away because most people would focus on the fact that he uses flying daggers. But Onseol didn't restrict himself to the weapons Jae-woon is using, and he basically saw through Jae-woon's martial arts. On the other hand, Onseol is not entirely pleased with himself because he can't ultimately use Jae-woon's skill to the fullest since the force is not there. Onseol concludes that he can't learn Jae-woon's technique really fast, and if it weren't for the texts he read in the archive, he would not have been able to copy the little he did. Since he is done with the squad leader and her vice, Onseol changes his attention to another squad member. He watches the dude for a moment, and he realizes that the dude's blade is outputting so much force for just a simple move. Onseol concludes that just watching it won't help him understand the technique, which is why he has to take another route. Onseol then walks to the corpse of the enemy the guy just defeated to feel it, leaving the squad member to wonder what Onseol is doing in the midst of battle. Moments later, Onseol lets off an evil smile because he has figured out what he wants to, and just then, an enemy appears behind him. The dude believes that Onseol is an easy target because he is not watching, but this turns out to be the dude's mistake as Onseol pushes his sword into the dude's head before casually cutting the dude up like it is nothing. Onseol figures out that whenever the dude makes contact with the enemy, he actually imbues his sword with true chi to maximize the force. With this, Onseol believes that he has already watched those he wants to, and just then, the leader of the enemy squad shows up in a grand manner, threatening to wipe out Jeon and her squad. The dude hurls a purplish projectile at them, which turns out to be poison. Upon coming into contact with some of the squad members, they get affected, but Jeon quickly takes control as she charges toward the enemy while cutting down his poisons. In return, Jeon's slashes hit his body, forcing him to raise his hands to block them. From the corner of her eyes, Jeon realizes that Onseol is still watching her, which is what he has been doing since the start of the battle. Jeon admits that she didn't want to acknowledge how impressive Onseol is because he just started learning martial arts, and she was not ready to see past that. However, Jeon doesn't think she can continue with this, and with a smile on her face, she has no choice but to agree that Onseol is impressive. When the enemy leader sees this, he gets pissed off because he can't believe that Jeon is seriously fighting him while smiling at the same time. The dude angrily hurls a more potent poison at Jeon, but Jeon easily blocks the attack halfway, dispersing it before it even has the chance to get to her. Jeon's sword reaches the dude's palm, and she delivers a powerful force into his body through his hand. The force is so much that it shatters every organ in his body, and he dies in that instant. Jeon casually tells her squad members to finish off the rest, since she was the one who took down the enemy leader. A week after they returned to the pavilion, Onseol was left baffled. He figures out that he has been focused on learning martial arts without knowing the fundamentals. Onseol knows that he recently reached a higher realm in his cultivation technique, but he wants to prepare properly before reaching the next realm. Because of this, he heads over to the mountain to see Hyol. Hyol is happy to see the boy, and he lets him know that he heard all about what he accomplished, but Onseol gives him all the credit for what he's done so far. Hyol then asks him if he is there because he wants to know more about cultivation, and Onseol is shocked that the man already knows this without him even saying anything. Hyol tells him that he doesn't have the basics, so it is normal for him to hit a wall, but he didn't know that it would take him this early to do so. Hyol lets off a big smile like a proud father. Hyol then decides to check Onseol's internal energy, and he realizes that he has more than 60 years worth of internal energy. He lets him know that the pure true chi he has cultivated through his childhood has been converted to antipolar true chi, thanks to the cultivation of his dormant vessels. Since Onseol is curious about martial arts standards, Hyol decides to explain them to him. He tells him that the peak realm is one above the first rate, where the body and internal energy have reached their maximum capacity. Apparently, going past that point and reaching the pinnacle of the martial arts that Unseol has learned is the supreme peak. However, after this is called the ultimate divine realm, and once one reaches this realm, they are able to freely control both their body and spirit. In addition, one can also escape the restraints of internal energy and the limits of the human body. Unseol then asks if there is something else above this, and Hyeol says yes. He mentions that reaching the peak of martial arts and achieving perfection is what they call the infinite realm. Apparently, only the Miram Alliance leader and the Demon Palace Master are the famous ones known to have reached the said realm. Unseol is blown away to hear that the two dudes who rule over the Miram are also the pinnacle of power. Hyeol explains that below these two are the 3 demons and the 3 venerables, then the 4 divines and 7 kings. Basically, all of them have reached the infinite realm. Upon hearing this, Unseol realizes that he still has a lot to learn, and Hyeol lets him know that there is still one realm, which is the highest realm, called the Divine Intent Realm. This is a realm where the martial artist becomes one with the beings of origin and knows the will of the heavens. It is basically a realm that no one has ever reached. Hyeol tells Unseol that what he just told him is currently out of his reach because, at the moment, he is at the beginning stage of the peak realm. Hyeol lets him know that since he has reached the 3rd realm of the reverse polarity cultivation technique, he will be able to produce body-protective true chi once he reaches the 4th realm. Hyeol tells him that once he is able to do this, he has reached the supreme peak realm, and once he reaches the 5th realm, he will be able to give shape to his internal energy. However, after this, once he reaches the 6th realm, his internal energy will endlessly circulate through his body, and in the 7th realm, he will have escaped the restraints of his body. Hyeol tells him that in the last realm, which is the 8th realm, he will obtain the power of great nature to have the authority to intervene in all living things. This sounds confusing to Unseol, and Hyeol admits that he doesn't have the knowledge to fully explain it because he only managed to reach the later stages of the 5th realm. However, since Unseol is curious about this, Hyeol believes that Unseol is finally ready to debut into the Janghu. Unseol is shocked that Hyeol knows this too, and Hyeol tells him that he figured this out, since there is no way Unseol will be asking him if that wasn't the case. Unseol confirms this, saying he has learned that the real battles are how he can become stronger the fastest, which is why he wants to go to the Janghu. It is basically more sensible to roam the Janghu if he wants to get information on the dude who killed his father rather than stay in the Demon Palace. Since he is heading out to the Janghu, Hyeol tells him that he is going to need information, and he urges him to find Wang, as he is going to tell him everything he needs to know. Unseol bows to the man, thanking him for his help, and Hyeol lets him know that the Janghu is dangerous, so he should be careful. With a smile on his face, Unseol tells Hyeol to take care of himself. Moments later, Unseol arrives at the blacksmith shop to meet Wang Gul. Wang then hands him a book, and Unseol asks what it is. Wang replies that the book contains what he would like to know, and when he opens it, Unseol is shocked to find out that it contains the Janghu's political situation and the information on each sect and their clan's traits. There is even intelligence on the renowned martial masters, and there is detailed information about the 10 demon masters. Unseol is totally blown away because what he is holding in his hand is too detailed for an ordinary blacksmith to know, which leaves him wondering how Wang knows all he does. Wang tells Unseol that he definitely will not face any issues once he reads all the information in the book, and he tells him to burn it once he is done with it. Unseol realizes that the dude might just be pivotal to his mission, and he decides to ask him a question. From this question, the two get to sit down to talk. Wang is surprised that Unseol wants to know about the ability to freely use one's bones and muscles to strike upward in a way to cleanly cut off a moving person's 2 hands using a lethal poison that causes flesh rot and poison corruption while equipping hidden weapons. Even Wang is impressed that there is someone who uses hidden weapons and even poison despite having such excellent swordsmanship. Wang then reveals that there is a possibility that this person is a spy who doesn't want to reveal their identity in the Janghu. Unseol is shocked to hear this, because what Wang is saying is that the person is not a martial master of the demonic path. Wang confirms this, saying the person probably used the techniques he mentioned to hide his identity because he is not from the demonic path. Unseol is shocked to hear this, and it dawns on him that he also has to be wary of the orthodox martial artists. Since Wang said the killer left these traces behind to deceive others, Unseol wonders how it is that he is supposed to find the dude. Just then, Wang tells Unseol that he has a proposal for him. The two end up talking a bit more, and in the end, Unseol heads over to Dan's office to tell him that he would like to go out to the Janghu. Dan is surprised to hear this, asking him if the experience he had with the founding Divine Squad was not enough. Unseol tells Dan that the experience he gained from the Divine Squad was valuable, but he believes that he needs more real-life situations in order to become better in his martial arts. Dan assures Unseol that he understands his drive, but at the same time he can't just let Unseol out because he is the Vice Master. Dan tells him that for him to be permitted to go out into the Janghu, he must be affiliated with a hall or squad and even get permission from its head. Eunseol assures Dan that he is aware of this and what he wants is to join the Salvation Squad. Dan is shocked to hear this, and he immediately flares up asking Eunseol how he knows this. Eunseol replies that he heard this from Wang because he was the one who suggested that he join the Salvation Squad. Apparently they are the squad that deals with assassinations, kidnappings, and even the theft of important resources. Apparently they carry out missions that the Demon Palace doesn't officially recognize, and Wang is convinced that it will be a good opportunity for him to get what he wants. Eunseol also realizes that it would be easier for him to get info on the killer if he joins the squad. Since they are given dangerous missions that pose dangers to their lives, Eunseol is convinced that this would force him to grow stronger if he joins them. Dan yells at Eunseol, saying he can't approve his request, but Eunseol lets him know that he is aware of what the squad does. Basically, the moment he joins them, his identity will be erased, and he will have to risk his life for every mission. Dan confirms this, saying the squad deals with all kinds of dirty work for the Demon Palace, and to join them, one would have to erase both their affiliation and name, which means he won't be able to receive help from anyone. Dan tells Eunseol that this squad is meant for only those who are trying to pay off their crimes or need a lot of money. Dan then asks Eunseol if he is really sure about what he is asking, and Eunseol confirms this, saying he would like to become stronger, fast. Eunseol tells Dan that if the path to power is the Salvation Squad, he is ready to do what is necessary. He reminds Dan that the 10 Demon Masters are merely tools to get rid of the orthodox martial masters, so it is basically just following what he was recruited for. Dan agrees with him, telling him that most of the demonic sects would use their 10 Demon Masters however they need in order to achieve their own goals. But he lets Eunseol know that the Wandering Beast Pavilion is different because he would like to make him a proper member of the pavilion. Eunseol is shocked when he hears this, and he finally realizes that Dan just cares for him and worries about him. Eunseol then tells Dan that he understands what he is trying to say, which is more reason he believes that he should join the Salvation Squad. Dan asks him what he means by this, and Eunseol mentions that from what he has seen, it doesn't appear that the martial artists of the pavilion grow stronger in comfort and protection. Upon hearing this, Dan finally realizes that there is no way for him to change Eunseol's mind. Dan then agrees, but tells Eunseol that it is only going to be for a year. Eunseol thanks Dan for changing his mind, and Dan tells him that he is free to quit the squad at any point that he believes he has obtained everything he needs to obtain and return to the pavilion. Dan then decides to tell him something, since he has made the decision to join the Jianghu. He tells him that his current appearance is easily noticeable. There is no doubt that he is the most famous among the 10 Demon Masters too, and hiding his identity would help him out really well. Later on, Eunseol heads into the city with a hat over his head, but he looks different from usual. As he walks through the city, he realizes that a lot of people are actually whispering about him, and it is a great idea that Dan changed his looks before allowing him to leave the pavilion. Moments later, he arrives at the Salvation Squad's branch, which is located in Yueyang. Eunseol uses the doorbell, and when he doesn't get a response, he walks into the building. He realizes that it is disguised as a library, leaving him wondering if he is really in the Salvation Squad's base. Moments later, he finds an old dude who asks him what he wants. Eunseol replies that he is there to sell a book, and he brings out a book, which he hands over to the old fella. The dude checks out the book, and on the ink sitting at the bottom corner, he realizes that there is a familiar sign sitting right there. Following their protocol, the old fella tells Eunseol that the book is already old and he is not going to get much for it. Eunseol replies that he would trade it for another. The old fella then calls out his assistant, Mawoon, telling him to show Eunseol the books that they have inside. With an innocent face and tone, Mawoon urges Eunseol to follow him. Once they step into the inner room, Mawoon locks the door, and his aura expression immediately changes. He introduces himself to Eunseol, telling him that he is in charge of the secret meeting. Since the Salvation Squad members are called by their number for convenience's sake, he decides to give Eunseol the number 18. He then hands him a book, telling him to pick one of the missions in the book, and he would explain the details to him. He opens the book, and he finds a mission that has a reward of 500 Nyang, but has a third issue on it. Eunseol then asks Mawoon what this means, and he replies that it basically means the number of times that the mission has been issued in the past. Basically, someone failed the mission thrice, and it wasn't taken up for so long, which is why it was issued 3 times. After taking a closer look, Eunseol realizes that the mission is all about stealing treasure or spreading misinformation, so this doesn't fulfill what he wants. Eunseol basically wants a fight that would test him and make him stronger, and he continues looking through the book to try to find something like that. Suddenly, he runs into a mission that has been issued 9 times, and the reward for this is 3,000 silver Nyang. This mission is to eliminate the Vice Hall Master of the Blood Yin Cult's Soul-Sparing Hall. Mawoon notices that Eunseol is getting carried away by the mission, and he tells him that there is no need for him to look at it, explaining that the Salvation Squad's missions are separated into 4 levels. The closer one gets to the number 1, the harder it is. From the number 2, it is mostly people who have been in the squad for more than 3 years that pick it, while level 1 is reserved for the top skilled members, so it is given to the best. Mawoon tells Unseol that at his point, level 2 is the highest level he can choose. He mentions that the vice master of the soul-sparing hall has been a famous martial master for a long time, and they have dealt with countless assassins until that moment, so normal tactics won't even work. Mawoon scares Unseol by reminding him that the mission is 3,000 Nyang for a reason, but Unseol tells him that this is exactly the mission he wants. Mawoon is surprised that Unseol is still demanding the mission, and Unseol lets him know that he doesn't care about the danger it poses. Apparently, in the book Wang gave him, there was information about the target, which means it is not an impossible mission. Mawoon is ultimately disappointed because he assumes that Unseol is just a kid rushing to his death when he already had high hopes for him. Since Unseol is insisting on what mission he wants, Mawoon decides to lead him to where he will get the equipment for the mission. Mawoon takes him to the armory, which is filled with several interesting weapons. But Mawoon ends up giving Unseol equipment that is already old and rusted. Unseol figures out that he is getting trash because the agency is not ready to waste their good stuff on someone who is about to die. Unseol doesn't mind, since he is just going to have to prove himself by making sure the mission is a success. After Unseol's departure, the old fella asks Mawoon how the meeting went, and he tells him that Unseol chose level 2 difficulty from the start. Mawoon believes that this is the last they will hear of Unseol, and even the old fella is shocked that Unseol is taking on a mission that requires him to kill Seok-jong. This is basically a mission that all the elite members have failed, and Mawoon reveals that this is why he gave Unseol random equipment, because he didn't want him to waste their resources. However, the old fella believes that things might not go the way they think. Talking about the Blood Yin sect, they live on the Blood Yin Island, and they are an evil sect of the demonic path that comes from the Blood Cult. Even though they live on a shut-in island, they still need deliveries. And this is the path Unseol plans to take. Acting like a delivery boy, Unseol plans to use the ships to infiltrate the Blood Yin Island. Unseol is busy helping out with the supplies when one of the martial artists suddenly grabs him and places a sword to his neck. Unseol freezes in fear, and it turns out that the dude was only testing him to see if he would react like someone who has learned martial arts. However, Unseol's perfect reaction of fear is able to deceive the dude that Unseol is not a spy. The dude sheathes his sword and suggests that they bring a doctor to treat Unseol. A doctor quickly rushes over to check on Unseol's injury, and he helps him to stitch up his neck. Unseol groans in pain as the doctor helps him out, but moments later the doctor tells him that it is done. He lets him know that there was some bleeding, but the wound wasn't actually deep, so he sewed it up, and with the look of things, he believes that it will close up in about 7 days. Unseol returns to the cabin and heaves a sigh of relief because he almost got caught. It turns out that he has been able to hold on this far thanks to the body transformation art he learned from the vice squad leader and the aura camouflage art he learned from Wang. Since the ship is going to sail the next morning, Unseol believes that it is imperative he kill Seok-jong that night. Later that night, Unseol puts on his disguise and he heads over to where the Blood Yin cult is located. He leaps through the roof as silently as he can while making sure that he stays in the shadows. He soon spots Seok having a conversation in the distance, and with the amount of internal energy he is sensing from the dude, he realizes that he is just as skilled as he was told. However, he finds it strange that the dude is freely emitting his internal energy as if he has not been targeted 9 times in the past. Unseol figures out that this might be a bait, and he concludes that he would have to watch out for it. Unseol starts following Seok, and as they move through the lonely hallway, he concludes that they are heading to the medicine storage, and he is able to put this together because of the smell. Since the medicine storage is underground, it is soundproof. Unseol concludes that this is going to be the best place for him to kill Seok. Unseol continues tracking the dude, and at some point it appears that Seok caught his scent, but he quickly hides behind a wall. Seeing that there is no reaction from Seok, Unseol assumes that he is safe. Seok enters the storage room and Unseol follows him without hesitation. Seeing how vulnerable Seok is because he turned his back on him, Unseol decides to end everything in one attack. He is about to make his move when he steps on one of the floor tiles and it activates a trap. Unseol quickly leaps backward expecting something dangerous, but it turns out to be coins falling on the ground. However, this has already given Unseol away and Seok mocks him, telling him that he is no different from the other assassins who have tried to kill him. He mentions that the others who have tried to kill him also tried doing so in the medicine storage room as if they all agreed on it. Just then, Unseol notices that the pots sitting in the distance are all filled with human heads. Seok whips out his sword, and with a smile on his face, he tells Unseol that he would like to add his head to the ones he already has. Seok realizes that Unseol is surprised, and he lets him know that his predecessors used the same tactics as him. They are always infiltrating incoming ships to try and assassinate him in the medicine storage room. He explains that it is because of this reason that he has set up traps, and all the assassins always fall for it. Yoon immediately realizes that this has been happening because of the lack of information among the Salvation Squad members. Since the mission is kept a secret, there is no exchange of information, causing them to keep falling into the same trap over and over. Seok then tells Unseol that he looks really young, and because of this, he is not going to use his favorite weapon against him. Seok drops his best weapon and decides to grab a weapon off the wall, telling Unseol to come at him. He promises to cut off Unseol's limbs and watch him writhe in pain. Unseol realizes that he has already failed the assassination, but this only means he gets to engage in a dangerous battle, which is something he wants. Unseol dashes towards Seok and their sword clashes against each other. At the moment, Seok notices something, forcing him to push Unseol backwards while commending him, telling him that his internal energy is pretty impressive. Seok adds that the sword techniques Unseol is using are not those of regular assassins, which makes him an interesting fellow to deal with. Seok then dashes toward Unseol with the black serpent blade technique, and Unseol observes closely to see that Seok might be fast, but his trajectory is quite obvious. He believes that if he stays calm, he will be able to deflect the attack, but he soon realizes just how wrong he is when the blade cuts through his body, leaving him wondering what just hit him. He believes that he already deflected the attack, but Seok just mocks him, telling him that he has no counter to his attack. Unseol is able to block Seok's next attack even though he knows that this leaves him open. He wonders why Seok isn't going for his weak spots, and he figures out that the dude isn't trying to kill him right away. Since this is the case, Unseol decides that he will get bolder and figure out how Seok's attack works. Unseol then dashes towards Seok with a series of slashes, but Seok is able to dodge all, and he decides to return the favor. Fortunately for Unseol, he is able to dodge the attack, but he is left stunned as to how Seok's attack trajectory was able to change in a flash. Unseol soon realizes that the dude is actually using fake moves, and he decides to take a more risky approach. Unseol closes his eyes, and Seok realizes that Unseol has figured out that he is using fake moves, but he believes that Unseol still stands no chance just because he closes his eyes. However, Unseol is confident that he can pull this off because he has the Wild Beast path, which would allow him to see Seok's movements. Seok makes his move, but to his surprise, Unseol easily dodges the strikes, causing a wave of panic in Seok's brain. Seok becomes more aggressive, but Unseol remains steadfast in his plan to counter Seok using the Wild Beast path. At some point, Seok is forced to retreat, but Unseol goes after him with the Swift Phantom skill, shocking Seok. Unknown to Seok, he actually committed two fatal mistakes. The first one is that he gave Unseol too much time for him to figure out how to counter him, while the other one is that he underestimated Unseol by not using his main weapon against him. Seok watches in horror as Unseol's strike breaks his sword into two, forcing him to frantically throw Unseol away with an energy blast to prevent him from landing the final strike. Unseol easily returns to a striking position, and when Seok sees this, he realizes that things are worse than he thought. Seok figures out that he has to call the other guard standing outside, but before he can blow his whistle, Unseol pushes his sword into his chest, ultimately ending his life. As he dies, Seok cannot believe that he actually lost to a mere assassin, and as Unseol stands over his dead body, he realizes that it is forbidden for a martial master to let their guard down for anyone. Later on, the old fella at the library is chilling when Mawoon rushes into the room to tell him that Seok is dead, ultimately shocking him to his bones. From the report they are getting, they learn that it wasn't an assassination style, but a dual-type death, and even the blade he was using was destroyed mid-battle. The library keeper is surprised to hear this, since they know Seok has been using the blade for 10 years, leaving them to start asking who is able to defeat him. Moments later, Unseol shows up at the library, and before Unseol can even say anything, they drag him into the inner room so that they can have a good conversation. Once they are in the inner room, the old fella asks Unseol if it is true that he killed Seok, and Unseol nods to confirm this. The dude is interested in knowing how he did it, but Unseol reminds them that it is their duty to give him missions, not to ask him how he did it. The dude admits that this is true, and he tells Unseol that he won't ask any more questions. Since the reward for the mission he just completed is 3,000 niang, he tells Unseol that he is going to give him a check. In addition, he lets him know that he is going to get the mission in 3 days. Unseol collects the money but leaves a currency note for him, and when the old man asks him why he did this, Unseol tells him to get a drink with it. After Unseol's departure, Mawoon crashes out, saying that Unseol is arrogant because he is treating the old fella like he is a store owner just because he is disguised as one. Instead of raging, the old fella laughs out loud before telling Mawoon to start giving Unseol the most difficult missions because this will raise their branch's image. With this, he believes that they will be able to make it out of the trenches. 6 months later, Unseol has become a pivotal member of the branch, and the old fella is always happy whenever he sees him. Even Mawoon is always acting all nice, telling Unseol that the branch's future is looking brighter thanks to him. Unseol figures out that the two are acting much differently from before, as if they have something that they need to tell him. The old fella then tells Unsil that the higher-ups have been paying attention to him, and because of this, they have decided to directly give him a mission. Unsil is eager to hear what the mission is, and the moment he hears that it is to protect someone, he immediately turns around to leave, saying he has no interest in it. However, Mawoon grabs his shirt, telling him that the mission is considered the greatest difficulty, which means he would get 10,000 Nyang per day. Unsil reminds Mawoon that he doesn't need money, and Mawoon agrees to this, but urges him to reconsider. The library keeper also reminds Unsil that the mission is directly from the higher-ups, and if he turns it down, the branch might be closed down. Deep down, the dude is just begging for Unsil to take the mission. The old dude tells him that if he takes the mission, he will get all the support he needs, including all the intel that they get. Unsil finally reconsiders, and he asks the dude how long the intel will be coming in. He replies that it is going to stay indefinitely, and this makes Unsil finally take the mission, but he lets them know that it is just this once. After Unsil is gone, Mawoon screams at his boss, asking him if he has gone crazy for promising to give Unsil all the intel that he needs when they are not some personal intelligence organization. The old man tells Mawoon to shut his mouth, letting him know that once the mission is complete, they might actually get the chance to return to the Demon Palace. Mawoon is shocked to hear this, and he asks the old man if he thinks this is actually possible. The old man then tells Mawoon that he might not be able to tell him the details yet, but he has to know that the target of the mission is a very important figure. Later on, Unsil reports to what appears to be an expensive restaurant where he meets the target. He introduces himself as number 18, and he informs the target that he is there for the guard mission. The target appears to be a lady, but the old man sitting with her doesn't look too happy with the whole arrangement. He mentions that they have already said many times that they don't need a guard. The target ignores the old man's ranting and introduces herself to Unsil as Sook. She also introduces the old man, who is considered her uncle, Woo Moonhwang. Unsil takes a closer look at the two and concludes that they are really rich because they are in an expensive restaurant, and Woo also appears to be a martial artist. Woo trashes Unsil, telling him that he won't get to do anything as long as he is there to protect So. He yells at Unsil, telling him not to get in So's way during her tour. Unsil can feel the pressure from the old man, but before things escalate, So cuts in, telling her uncle that he is not supposed to be rude to someone who is there to help them. So then asks Unsil if he is fine, and Unsil replies that Woo is obviously skilled enough not to need him. So then mentions that her uncle already quit his activities in the Jianghu long ago, and this is why the Demon Palace is concerned. Woo, on the other hand, doesn't think there is anything to be worried about. Unsil finally realizes why he was needed for the guard mission. Woo has stopped being a martial artist long ago, which means his instincts in detecting danger must have dulled, especially in an area that is foreign to him. Unsil figures out that it is his role to make sure that no problem occurs. So then asks Unsil why he is named number 18, and he reveals that this is a title that they get so that they can remain anonymous in the Salvation Squad. With a smile on her face, she concludes that she would also be calling Unsil Mr. 18. After this, So asks him if he has a fake face because he wants to remain anonymous. Unsil is totally shocked when he hears this because no one has ever noticed until that very moment. So then reveals that she has better eyesight than most people, and she could see that his facial muscles moved a bit unnaturally. The moment Unsil hears this, he figures out that So is no ordinary lady, which means she might actually be more important than he expected. So is still talking about how they plan to go on a boat tour once they are done eating, when Unsil cuts in, saying something is definitely off. He mentions that the people in the restaurant have been repeating the same conversation over and over again, which basically means one thing. Without a doubt, Unsil believes that everyone in the building is an assassin out there to take So out of the equation. However, Unsil is thankful that they are sitting in the corner, so there is no way the assassins would get to them from behind. Unsil is planning out his strategy when Woo cuts in, telling Unsil to stay out of the whole thing because he doesn't need him. Woo confidently tells Unsil that he is going to show him why he is enough to become her guard. Unsil is about to stop him when Woo dashes to the front to get the attention of everyone in the room. The assassins are shocked when they realize that Woo has figured out who they are. Nonetheless, they decide to attack him all at once. The first dude who gets close to Woo gets a taste of what it means to go up against a veteran martial artist. Woo slams his hand on his chest, projecting so much force into him that all of his internal organs are fractured. The dude dies on the spot, while those behind him get knocked to the ground. Unsil can't believe that Woo is able to do this much damage just from the force coming out of his palm. Unsil then admits that the dude is more skilled than he thought. The leader of the assassin squad screams at his subordinates, telling them to rush at Woo because there are only 3 of them there. They follow his orders and rush at Woo, but this turns out to be a futile attempt as Woo smashes his palm into the ground to release a massive force, throwing them off their balance. Once they are in a vulnerable position, Woo goes after them, taking them down one after the other. Suddenly, a blade comes flying towards So's location, but Yoonseol is there to protect her. He deflects the attack and he tells So to stay within 3 steps of his range. So acknowledges this, and before they know it, more assassins leap toward their position, but Yoonseol remains steadfast. Moments later, Woo clears out the assassins he is engaging, and he confidently walks back to where So is to ask her if she is fine. So says she is fine, which is all thanks to Yoonseol. Woo retorts, saying Yoonseol didn't do anything, so she doesn't need to praise him. With a stern voice, Yoonseol asks Woo if he is there to protect So or if he is there to boast about his own skills. This pisses Woo off, and he tells Yoonseol that he is an arrogant kid who doesn't have the right to talk to him. Just then, Woo looks around, and he realizes that Yoonseol actually took down the assassins who got close to So. He finally admits that Yoonseol might actually be useful, and he reluctantly commends him. He then suggests that they return to the inn, but Yoonseol advises against this, telling them that the assassins might have positioned themselves there already. Yoonseol lets him know that this same thing might happen in the inn, so it is better that they hide until they know who is behind the attack. However, Woo argues against this, telling Yoonseol that the assassins are mere flies who pose 0 threat to him. Yoonseol admits that the assassins are no threat to him, but he reminds him that they are there to protect So. Woo argues that this doesn't change anything because he only let down his guard for a moment, which won't happen again. Yoonseol then suggests that they disguise themselves at least, but Woo still refuses, saying there is no need to be scared. Yoonseol immediately figures out that Woo is not the type to be convinced, and he concludes that he is just going to go with what he says in the meantime. However, Yoonseol tells So to stay behind him the moment they enter the inn, because he is pretty sure that So is going to be in danger the moment they enter the inn. Nonetheless, he doesn't mind because he actually wants the battle. Moments later, they arrive at the inn, and upon opening the gate, Woo confidently strolls in. As they go through the walkway, Woo realizes that assassins are already lying in wait, and he lets off a big smile before going after them to take them out in an instant. After clearing out the assassin, he boastfully turns to Yoonseol, reminding him that he already told him that there is going to be no problem. However, Yoonseol tells him that the problem is not over just yet, and before Woo knows what is happening, a ton of assassins emerge out of nowhere. In no time, the trio is surrounded, and when Yoonseol sees this, he realizes just how important So actually is. After smashing a ton of assassins' brains for a while, Woo begins to get tired as he screams, complaining about how they just keep coming. No matter how many of them he takes down, twice as many end up coming again, like an endless loop. Woo notes that there are at least triple the number of assassins that ambush them in the restaurant, and from the way they move, these assassins are not the regular kind because they're using proper sword techniques. This leaves Woo wondering why such an organized group is after them. Nevertheless, he continues to crush them with nothing but his palms without getting a moment to catch his breath. Unfortunately, one of the assassins catches him off guard and strikes from behind. Woo wasn't expecting this, and as he screams out in pain, he calls out to So, who's also about to be taken out by the assassin. Fortunately, Yoonseol steps in just in time and slashes the assassin into a million pieces. Afterwards, So thanks Yoonseol for saving her again, but he ignores her as he tries to figure out how to get out of this chaotic situation. As he observes their surroundings, Yoonseol notices that Woo is getting worn out from the endless fighting. Even though the old guy is powerful, there's no way he can keep this up while also thinking about how to protect So. Yoonseol knows that if things keep going this way, the assassins might end up defeating Woo. Meanwhile, Woo continued to put up quite the fight with his palms, but as Yoonseol speculated, he was beginning to burn out. Just as he stops to catch his breath for a moment, Woo's eyes widen as another fresh horde of assassins pours into the courtyard, looking ready to kill. Woo can't believe there are still so many of them, despite the large numbers he just took out. He knows he could probably handle them alone if only he didn't have to keep an eye on So at the same time. Since continuing such an endless battle while protecting So isn't feasible, Woo decides to take drastic measures. He calls Yoonseol's attention and tells him to leave quickly with So while he handles the assassins alone. However, Yoonseol lets him know that it's a bad idea since the entire area around the inn must already be surrounded. Yoonseol also points out that it makes more sense for them to fight together instead of splitting up. Yoonseol hopes they can hold out for just 2 hours until help from their side arrives. But Woo stands his ground and begs Yoonseol to just do as he says. Yoonseol quietly considers Woo's words, but So is against leaving Woo behind. However, Yoonseol ignores her, and after apologizing, he lifts So into his arms, leaving her flustered. Seeing they're ready to leave, Woo immediately takes out a bunch of assassins with his palm strikes to carve an escape path for Yoonseol. The moment the path is cleared, he orders Yoonseol to leave, and without hesitation, Yoonseol zooms off swiftly with So secured tightly in his arms. The assassins soon notice them, and from every corner they immediately charge towards them in pursuit, almost catching up. To put some distance between himself and them, Yoonseol decides not to use any fancy movement techniques, but focuses all his effort on increasing his speed because that is what he needs most in this situation. The moment he figures this out, Yoonseol zooms off at the speed of light, leaving them behind, while So clings tightly to his chest. But just when he thinks they made it out safely, another group of assassins positioned in the surrounding area starts chasing after them. Yoonseol is surprised that they were also hiding this far and figures whoever sent them must have enlisted quite a massive number for them to keep coming. He then swiftly zooms off and a few moments later rushes into the Salvation Squad base. Mawoon and the leader of the base, Sang Ryang, are about to welcome their new guest when they realize it's Yoonseol carrying a lady. Sang asks Yoonseol about the situation, and Yoonseol simply tells him that they need to borrow a room. Both Sang and Mawoon misunderstand the situation, especially since Yoonseol came with such a pretty lady. Without waiting for their input, Yoonseol pulls So away, telling them that he'll be using the secret storage room. He then pulls the room's hidden mechanism and takes So into the secret room where he asks her to wait for him. So is visibly shaken as she worries about Woo, and she's about to ask Yoonseol about him when Sang and Mawoon rush in, asking Yoonseol to explain what is going on. Yoonseol simply orders them to patrol around the store and take out any assassins that try to enter. He explains that a large group of assassins is after So and is swarming around the surrounding area like bees. Sang and Mawoon are shocked to hear this, and since they said their lives depend on the success of the escort mission, Yoonseol decides to put them to work. He sternly tells them to fight like their actual lives truly depend on the success of the mission. After hearing Yoonseol's instruction, Sang remains calm, while Mawoon tries to wrap his head around the whole situation. After a brief silence in the room, Sang makes up his mind to defend the store, knowing their return to glory truly depends on this last mission. The two men immediately pick up their weapons, happily deciding to defend the fort at all costs. Mawoon is even more excited that his death scythe will be drawing blood since it's been a while since they've seen any action. Before leaving, Sang and Mawoon happily introduce themselves to So, but before they can finish, So chimes in, saying she knows them. She recalls that they were famously known as the Gong Demon Duo. Even Yoonseol is surprised to hear this because he doesn't know much about these two. So reveals that she knows about their upcoming reassignment to the Demon Palace. She also promises to put in a good word for them with her father once she returns home safely. Sang and Mawoon are excited to hear this, while Yoonseol is still struggling to believe that these two clowns are really the Gong Demon Duo. Apparently, they used to be in a high position, but were demoted after they accidentally killed spies of the Demon Palace who were disguised as orthodox martial artists. After getting thrown out of the Demon Palace, they were exiled to the broken-down branch of the Salvation Squad to carry out their sentence. Mawoon and Sang light up as they thank So before enthusiastically scurrying off outside to fight for their future. So and Yoonseol watch the clowns as they jump out like jokers, telling So to rest well. Once they leave, Yoonseol also prepares to head out and warns So not to leave the secret room until he opens the door. Before he can step out, So stops him and expresses her fear about dying there. Yoonseol assures her that she won't die and vows to keep her safe no matter the cost. So is surprised to hear this, and she's greatly touched by his words. After a brief moment of silence, she steps closer, saying she has something to tell him. She then tugs at the back of his sleeves, telling him to remember what she's about to tell him in case she never makes it out alive. So then whispers into Yoonseol's ear, confessing that her last name is actually Dan. She reveals that her real name is Dan So-ok. Yoonseol is shocked when he hears this because that name belongs to none other than the most treasured daughter of the leader of the House of Demon Gathering, a powerful man who oversees the military forces of the Demon Palace. Despite being a powerful martial artist, his daughter, So, was unfortunately born with the absolute yin physique. This type of body makes it impossible for her to learn martial arts. But despite lacking in martial talent, she was chosen as the potential future overseer of the Demon Palace because she's extremely smart and intelligent. Yoonseol finally realizes that So is being attacked ruthlessly because she got dragged into the insane political struggles of the Demon Palace. Yoonseol confirms again, just to make sure she's truly the daughter of the House of Demon Gathering leader. So then begs Yoonseol to tell her his real name since all she knows about him is that he is referred to as number 18. Yoonseol is taken aback by her request, but he turns her down and promises to tell her later. Fearing this might be the last time she sees him alive, So refuses to back down. However, Yoonseol refuses to change his mind and promises to tell her once he returns after handling the situation. So has no choice but to let him go, though she is pleased that he promised to return. After closing the door to the secret room, Yoonseol cannot shake the strange feeling left by So's request to know his name. He struggles to understand why a girl of her status would care about the name of a nameless member of the Salvation Squad. Pushing the thought aside, Yoonseol destroys the mechanism used to open the secret room. If he fails, the assassins will have a much harder time getting through the door, buying time for reinforcements to arrive and rescue So. After destroying the mechanism, Yoonseol senses assassins nearing the door to the store. He had hoped that Sang and Mawoon could hold them back, but the assassins arrived faster than he expected. As he takes his position in front of the door, a voice from outside warns Yoonseol to surrender and be saved. They even urge him not to waste his life, but Yunseol finds this dialogue rather amusing. He reveals that the only reason an assassin would be talking like this is that they're not sure they can win against him. Hearing this, the voice on the other end falls silent for a few seconds before angrily cursing Yunseol for being arrogant. The next moment, the door is sliced open as a group of assassins charges in, swearing to erase Yunseol. Despite the numbers, Yunseol remains calm and, with a single slash, cuts down the first line of assassins before effortlessly breezing through the rest. As more assassins pour into the store, Yunseol continues to fearlessly cut them down until every single one of them is slain, leaving nothing but a trail of blood and corpses behind. After slaying dozens of them, Yunseol tries to catch his breath, but he curses under his breath as he senses another person in the room. He thought he defeated every single assassin that came in, but one was still lurking behind in the shadows. Suddenly, a voice echoes from behind the door, commending Yunseol for detecting his presence. The moment he steps out, he questions where a powerful guy like Yunseol came into the mix. He explains that he would have put his plans on hold if he had known about Yunseol's existence next to So. From his tone, Yunseol can tell that his presence definitely ruined this dude's plan. He figures that their plan to assassinate So was probably set in motion before he joined the Salvation Squad 6 months ago. This guy then advises Yunseol to back off and promises to let him walk away with his life intact. The masked dude assures him that he's not trying to negotiate just because he's scared of losing to Yunseol. The whole time, Yunseol quietly listens as he takes a battle-ready stance, despite looking completely wiped out. After the dude's warnings, Yunseol observes him for a while before firmly yelling that he won't let the dude pass through him. The guy is impressed by the pressure coming from Yunseol and praises him for having decent internal energy for an assassin. Feeling overly confident that Yunseol is beneath him, the guy decides to let him make the first move as a way of being magnanimous. As he raises his sword, Yunseol recognizes that this dude is not an assassin because his stance is unique, and for him to remain calm while proudly talking about who should make the first move means he's not just some ordinary dude. Yunseol can't help but wonder why someone like him is here since he's not an assassin. Still, he charges towards the dude, hoping that making the first move can give him some type of advantage. But to his shock, the masked dude uses a heavy sword technique to counter Yunseol's move. Yunseol is amazed by how powerful the man's heavy sword technique is and knows he can't blindly clash head-on with him. If he does, his sword will instantly shatter, putting him in a very dangerous situation. The only way for him to face this is to counterattack with a heavy sword technique. Yunseol first manages to deflect the guy's first strike, which surprises him that Yunseol was able to evade his attack. He even commends Yunseol's technique, but points out that this move shows that Yunseol doesn't have the means to properly block his attacks. He charges forward again to deliver another strike, which Yunseol deflects again. But what he doesn't know is that Yunseol also possesses a heavy sword technique. Since this dude looks down on him as a mere assassin with some tiny bit of inner energy and no skills, Yunseol decides to take advantage of this. He plans to bide his time until the guy uses a powerful attack to show off his superiority. Yunseol reasons that his opportunity will come while this dude is flaunting some flamboyant moves. A few moments later, Yunseol returns to his position and notices a sword still lodged in the back of one of the fallen assassins. Believing that Yunseol has been doing nothing but dodging and deflecting in an attempt to stall for time, the masked assassin decides to end the battle with a single powerful strike. As the assassin leaps into the air, determined to deliver the finishing blow, Yunseol puts his plan into action. In one swift motion, he pulls the sword from the fallen assassin's back and grips it in his free hand. He intends to use the essence of the dual-wielding mind art, a technique he learned from a member of the founding divine squad of the Wandering Beast Pavilion. Charging toward the masked guy, Yunseol attacks with both swords simultaneously. With one hand, he unleashes team leader Jian's Heavenly Overlord Ultimate Blade Momentum, while with the other, he executes a powerful heavy sword technique. The two attacks converge as he meets his opponent head-on, their blades colliding in midair with overwhelming force. The masked assassin is caught off guard by Yunseol's unexpected counterattack. He still manages to land his strike, but he does not emerge unscathed. Although his injuries are far less severe than Yunseol's, the exchange leaves him shaken. He is especially surprised that Yunseol actually wields a heavy sword technique. He quickly realizes that he had fallen right into Yunseol's trap, allowing his own carelessness and pride to be exploited. Had he not instinctively expanded the range and power of his heavy sword technique at the last moment, Yunseol's attack might have severed his head entirely. That realization leads him to the conclusion that Yunseol cannot be allowed to stay alive. However, as he prepares to deliver the finishing blow, he senses a powerful aura rapidly approaching the store, which he immediately recognizes as Wu's. Without hesitation, he decides to abandon the attack and retreat. This is because while Yunseol is an easy target, Wu is an entirely different matter. He knows that there's no guarantee of victory against someone of Wu's caliber, and engaging him in battle under the current circumstances would be a reckless gamble. Although furious, the dude is unwilling to take that risk. He says Unseol is very lucky today, but promises that he will return one day and finish him off slowly. Using the little strength he has left, Unseol replies that the dude stole his line. The response amuses the masked man, and before disappearing he says that he will be looking forward to Unseol's revenge. Even after the masked assassin vanishes, Unseol remains standing for a moment before finally collapsing. He recalls the overwhelming pressure the masked man released just before leaving and wonders if he had been hiding his true strength the entire time. Putting the thought aside, Unseol heaves a sigh of relief just as the secret storage room finally opens from the inside. When So sees him on the floor, she rushes over to check on him and blames herself for his current state. She begs him not to die on her, but Unseol simply scolds her for ignoring his warning to stay hidden until he opens the door. So bursts into tears as she explains that she came out because she was worried about him. Unseol is moved by her words and finally tells her his real name as promised. So is puzzled for a moment until he reminds her about their discussion before he left the secret storage room. He then repeats his name, just in case she didn't hear him clearly the first time. After hearing his real name, So stares at him for a brief second before happily promising to remember both his name and his real face. Hearing this, Unseol touches his face and realizes that the body transformation technique he used to change his face has worn off, revealing his true face. Even though he looks like shit at the moment, So is still captivated by his looks. A few minutes later, Unseol struggles to sit up and tells So to give him a hand. Just as So is about to pull him up, Woo barges into the store, asking if she's alright. He suddenly stops in his tracks in shock when he sees the pile of assassin corpses lying in the room. He can't believe Unseol single-handedly took down this many assassins. After musing over the incredible sight, he rushes into the next room to make sure So is safe. He immediately falls silent when he sees her with her arms around Unseol. Realizing how Woo could misunderstand this as a compromising position, So quickly pulls away, stammering. She awkwardly assures Woo that she's fine thanks to Unseol's protection. Just then, Sang and Mawoon rush into the room, weapons up, claiming they came to help. Sang explains that they did their best to hold off the assassins, but a few of them got away and headed towards the store, so they came to help. Before he can finish speaking, Sang realizes that everyone in the room is staring at them like clowns. Seeing that they're a bit late to offer any help, Sang and Mawoon shut their mouths, wondering why the room is so tense. Woo then walks up to Unseol and commends him for protecting So. Unseol says he was only doing his job, but the next moment, Woo falls to his knees before Unseol. He expresses his gratitude before apologizing for being such a pompous brat earlier. He humbles himself and thanks Unseol for keeping So safe, even though he treated him like trash earlier. Unseol is moved by his words, while So is surprised that her proud uncle is bowing down, knowing that being humble is an unusual thing for him. Unseol manages to stand up and offers Woo a hand to show that he isn't nursing any grudges. Woo is a bit taken aback seeing how magnanimous Unseol is. He then shakes Unseol's hand, and as a sense of shame washes over him, Woo admits that Unseol is truly an incredible man. Not just because he's talented, but the way he carries himself is quite commendable. After getting that out of the way, Woo asks the inspectors if they've uncovered the identity of the assassins. One of them explains that they were not able to find anything linking the assassins to any specific sex. They couldn't even uncover whether the assassins belonged to the orthodox or unorthodox factions. Woo is disappointed to hear this, as he mentions that the group was quite organized and had no plans of leaving any traces behind. He then says he will be returning to the headquarters and vows to uncover the identity of the attackers, no matter what. With Woo's declaration and the expression on his face, Unseol concludes that the Jianghu is about to see bloodshed. Later that night, Woo and So board a carriage to head back to the Demon Palace. From the window of the carriage, So bids Unseol farewell, wishing they meet again someday. Unseol doesn't respond and simply watches as their carriage drives off. Somewhere in the Blood Slaughter sect, the sect leader is furious when he learns about the failed assassination attempt on So's life. He finds it difficult to believe that they failed despite deploying the massive main forces of the Blood Slaughter sect. He continues to question how the mission failed even after getting rid of Woo from So's side. However, the messenger is unable to explain where things went wrong, leaving the sect leader frustrated. Suddenly, a commotion erupts outside and he sends the messenger to check what's going on. The moment the guy opens the door, his head is detached from his neck in an invisible strike. The sect leader is spooked as the head bounces to the floor. Shocked, he asks the executioner if they're here to tie up loose ends, but before he can finish speaking, he's also slain. A few moments later, martial artists from the House of Demon Gathering rush to the Blood Slaughter sect to investigate the mastermind behind the attempt on So's life. They arrive at the request of her father, but are stunned when they discover the sect drenched in blood. Shortly after the failed raid, the captain reports back to So's father, Dan Wolhon, the leader of the House of Demon Gathering. The captain informs him that they were unable to capture anyone from the blood slaughter sect because every member had already been slaughtered by the time they arrived. Wolhan is puzzled by the news because as soon as he learned that So had been attacked, he activated several powerful intelligence networks to track down the mastermind. Their investigation pointed to the blood slaughter sect. However, Wolhan finds it hard to believe that such a minor assassination sect would dare challenge the mighty house of Demon Gathering on its own. Now that the blood slaughter sect has been wiped out, Wolhan is convinced that someone else is pulling the strings behind the scenes. And to orchestrate a massacre to bury the truth, they must be big players in the game. Enraged, Wolhan informs the captain to find the mastermind and make them pay for what they did. Wolhan then asks about his daughter, and the captain replies that she's doing fine except that she can't stop talking about the warrior who saved her. Apparently, since she returned home, the only thing she talks about is the warrior from the Salvation Squad. Wolhan is surprised and wonders what is so impressive about warrior number 18 from the Yueyang branch of the Salvation Squad. He then mentions Unseol's full name and commits it to memory, revealing that they know his true identity. 6 months after the assassination saga, life at the Salvation Squad returns to normal. Unseol was still one-shotting difficult missions while Sang and Mawoon continued to suck up to him as the savior of their branch. After welcoming Unseol after a mission, Mawoon suggests they go out for a drinking spree. While considering the request, Unseol recalls how the last 6 months have been for him. He had completed all the missions that were deemed impossible and gained validation from Sang and Mawoon. Thanks to that, their attitude towards him has changed drastically, and unlike how they kept things strictly professional before, Unseol had gotten closer to them, close enough to drink together and crack jokes instead of just talking about missions. Putting his thoughts away, Unseol reminds Mawoon that they went out drinking just yesterday. However, Mawoon insists on going out for drinks because they'll be heading back to the Demon Palace in 10 days. Besides, Unseol plans to quit the Salvation Squad at the same time, so Sang agrees they need to take the opportunity to hang out while they're still together. Mawoon says they're treating Unseol this time to thank him for helping them return to the Demon Palace. Despite their persuasion, Unseol turns them down, explaining that he needs to pack up his room. However, Sang and Mawoon refuse to back down, and they promise to help him pack up. Mawoon then drags him out to get drunk, boasting that he bought 3 jars of the good stuff. A few moments later, the group ends up drinking on the rooftop of the store following Unseol's direction. They had reserved a private room at the Red Pavilion, but Unseol convinced them to drink on the rooftop instead. Sang calls Unseol weird for this, while Mawoon supports him. Unseol tells them to drink 1 jar on the rooftop and head to the Red Pavilion if they don't like it here. They then agree to go with his suggestions and proceed to enjoy their drinks. But after a few more cups of booze, Sang begins to enjoy himself and admits that Unseol was right about drinking on the rooftop. He commends Unseol for being so knowledgeable, but Unseol explains that he only found this spot because he hates crowded places. Sang observes Unseol closely and starts talking about how he felt when they first met. He admits that the first time Unseol walked into the store, he thought he was just another arrogant brat. But Sang's opinion of him started changing after he succeeded in the first difficult mission. Over time, he started seeing Unseol in a new light as he continued to complete missions that even veteran members skipped. Mawoon chimes in, saying the best mission Unseol pulled off is definitely the one where he protected So. Sang chuckles as Mawoon demonstrates how Unseol stood his ground. He also admits that they were shocked when he barged into the library, asking them to fight off the assassins. They then express how surprised they were when they came back to the library only to see that Unseol had handled a ton of assassins alone. As Sang thinks back to all the things that have happened since they met Unseol, he suddenly becomes emotional. He says he doesn't know why Unseol joined the Salvation Squad and advises him to try his best to live a life filled with joy like them because the world is already filled with chaos as it is. Sang also tells him to come to them whenever he wants to let loose. Moved by his words, Unseol agrees, even though the whole emotionally cringeworthy speech isn't his thing. Sang continues to stare at him, making the atmosphere awkward for Unseol, who avoids his gaze. After a painfully awkward silence, Sang breaks the ice and raises his cup, saying he shouldn't have made things so emotional all of a sudden. He then urges them to keep drinking, and Mawoon joins in the drunken cheer. Unseol quietly sips his drink like a cultured man while Sang and Mawoon's laughter echoes through the night. After their drinking party, Unseol heads back to his room while thinking about his coworkers. He notes that Sang is a pretty chill guy, even though he's a money grubber who is lazy and loves sucking up. He also admits that Mawoon is simply a silly, innocent dude, despite coming off as arrogant and hot-headed at first. Nevertheless, he admits that both of them are good guys, and he can't help but feel attached to them. Unseol is about to open his door when he senses that there's someone inside his room. Using his beast sense, he pinpoints the intruder's position inside the room before opening the door. Upon entering, Unseol casually walks to the other end of the room where the intruder suddenly places a sword to his neck. The intruder smugly taunts Eunseol for not keeping his guard up despite being known as the legendary Salvation Squad member. Eunseol calmly tells him to look around, reminding him that he's the one who has his guard down. The intruder scans the room only to realize that there are several small crossbows on the shelf pointing directly in his direction. Observing more closely, he realizes that Eunseol pretended to let his guard down just to lure him into the trap. Now he's at a disadvantage, and Eunseol's foot is placed on the trigger, ready to release it at any moment. Eunseol then demands to know his identity, and the guy reveals that he's a messenger from the Demon Palace. He swiftly flings a letter towards Eunseol, clearly targeting him, but Eunseol effortlessly catches it without batting an eye. The intruder then feigns ignorance, claiming he threw the letter using an assassination technique out of habit. Eunseol ignores him and checks out the envelope to see that it's a level 4 request. Basically, level 4 missions are only given to the best warriors in the Salvation Squad, and only 12 of them have been issued so far. The dude expresses how envious he is that Eunseol is the youngest to receive a level 4 mission. However, Eunseol doesn't feel the same, as this just makes him feel uneasy. He quickly opens the letter as he wonders what kind of mission it is. But the moment he reads the content of the letter, his heart drops. Eunseol has been tasked with eliminating Sang and Mawoon, the very people he was just starting to get attached to. The letter claims that Sang and Mawoon are spies sent by the Murim Alliance, and Eunseol is supposed to erase them in 4 days before their transfer to the Demon Palace. After reading the shocking letter, Eunseol stares at it for a while before asking if he can skip the mission. He explains that he doesn't feel the need to accept such an important mission since he's only a few days from quitting the Salvation Squad. Unfortunately, the messenger tells him that this high-grade mission is basically an order he cannot refuse. He warns Eunseol that refusal means going against the Demon Palace, and the consequence will be more than just paying with his life. Although Eunseol doesn't mind being tagged a traitor, he doesn't want to drag the Wandering Beast Pavilion into his mess. He knows that if he refuses this mission, the Demon Palace will go after everyone from the Wandering Beast Pavilion. The messenger then asks Eunseol again if he's sure he wants to reject the mission. Eunseol ignores the question, and after carefully studying him, he concludes the messenger's gaze seems sus. He suspects that the Demon Palace might be giving him this mission to test his loyalty. Eunseol feels that they're doubting his identity because he has achieved so much in such a short time. The fact that they're forcing him to accept such a high-priority mission confirms his suspicions. After considering it for a moment, Eunseol tells the messenger that he accepts the mission. With a triumphant grin, the messenger smugly lets Eunseol know that he made the right decision. A few nights later, Eunseol prepares to head out to investigate properly before executing his new friends. Due to his recent success in difficult missions, the Salvation Squad's Yueyang branch has been getting a lot of attention lately. And since Sang and Mawoon are the overseers of the branch, Eunseol wants to rule out the possibility that someone might be trying to eliminate them. He especially wants to make sure that the mission hasn't been tampered with by the Murim Alliance just to erase the two people they consider a threat. After dressing up properly and covering his face with a mask, Eunseol heads out to investigate if his comrades are truly spies. Eunseol plans to reject the mission if the information in the letter has been tampered with, so that he doesn't have to kill them. Shortly after, he arrives at the Salvation Squad branch of Guilin, where the Gong Demon duo were stationed when the incident happened. Eunseol notes that it would make sense that they're spies of the Murim Alliance since they eliminated a spy of the Demon Palace. However, he doesn't want to jump to conclusions without actual evidence, so he came to the Guilin branch to investigate. Inside the library in front of the Salvation Squad of the Guilin branch, the manager is minding his own business when Eunseol appears behind, spooking him. He crashes to the floor, and Eunseol puts a sword to his neck, asking if he's Jin Dong, the manager. Jin Dong boldly questions Eunseol for breaking in and demands to know his identity. Eunseol pulls down his mask as he calmly introduces himself, revealing that he's from the Beast Pavilion. He then demands to know everything about the Gong Demon duo who were stationed in Guilin 4 years ago. Jin Dong is shocked when he realizes that Eunseol is one of the 10 demon masters. Eunseol threatens to erase him, telling him not to waste his time. He boasts that no one would punish him if he took out a small fry like Jin Dong. However, Jin Dong hesitates as he explains that only members of the Salvation Squad are allowed to access the archives. Eunseol says it wouldn't be a problem because he's number 18 of the Yueyang branch. Jin Dong's soul almost flees his body when he hears this, and finding it hard to believe, he questions if Eunseol is truly the famous number 18. What he can't understand is what one of the 10 demon masters is doing in the Salvation Squad. Fed up with the 1,000 questions, Eunseol threatens to eliminate Jin Dong and just find the information he needs on his own, but Jin Dong quickly surrenders and begs Eunseol to give him a minute to search for the records. A few minutes later, he hands the records to Eunseol, who immediately starts flipping through the book, eager to know if the Gong Demon duo are spies of the Murim Alliance or just scapegoats in some complex scheme. Eunseol's eyes suddenly widen when he finds what he's looking for. When it comes to spies, every faction raises its own, especially large unions like the Demon Palace and the Murim Alliance. The spies are all just chess pieces on a board with similar methods of operation. After confirming what he came for, Yoon-seol slams the book shut as he prepares to make his next decision. The following day, he invites Sang and Ma-woon out in the woods for a drink. Sang is surprised that Yoon-seol made the first move to invite them because they're usually the ones who have to drag him out. Ma-woon chimes in, saying that they've been drinking on the rooftop since Yoon-seol initiated them to it. Sang says he didn't like the rooftop idea, but after trying it out a few times, he realized it wasn't so bad after all. Ma-woon explains that it's because people copy the habits of someone they like, and Sang agrees with this theory. The whole time they're chatting and drinking, Yoon-seol quietly sips his drink without contributing to the conversation. After downing about 4 jars of booze, the Gong Demon duo continues to suck up to Yoon-seol while he remains detached, deep in thought. After drinking, Sang gets serious as he asks Yoon-seol to ask what he's been planning to ask them. Yoon-seol is taken aback that it was obvious from his expression that he had questions for them. Sang explains that it's because they have known each other for almost a year, and Yoon-seol never drinks as fast as he did today. He says that people often rely on liquid courage when they're hesitant to say what's really on their minds. As Yoon-seol studies Sang closely, he notices a slight shift in Sang's body language, as though he already knows what Yoon-seol is about to ask. Deciding to just get it over with, Yoon-seol cautiously asks if both of them are really spies of the Orthodox Murim. Silence follows immediately, and the atmosphere grows tense as Yoon-seol patiently waits for the answer he is already certain of. Sang talks about how disappointed he is that the whole situation has evolved into such a tragic outcome because he was actually looking forward to returning to the Demon Palace. Sang says he already had a faint idea that their identities were no longer safe, and Yoon-seol asks him why he didn't just leave after he noticed this. Ma-woon cuts in, saying there is a possibility that they just wanted to prove that they were still useful. Ma-woon says they stayed this way because they had already made it so that the Orthodox and the unorthodox sects' intelligence organizations, which were also entangled, would be able to work without any conflicts. They basically thought they were already useful enough for Yoon-seol to turn a blind eye to their misdeeds. But surprisingly, Yoon-seol surpassed their expectations. Yoon-seol is surprised when he hears Ma-woon call him by his name, since he didn't know that they actually knew about his real identity. Sung tells him that throughout his missions, he was able to wipe out the entire Orthodox intelligence organizations in Yueyang to make it in such a way that whoever took charge of the branch would be able to do it easily. Since it has come to this, Sang believes that their purpose no longer exists. Sang urges our guy to put his emotions aside because the outcome was already predetermined. Yoon-seol is sad to hear this, since he has grown an attachment to the two over the past 6 months. However, the ruthless way of the Murim world now requires that he cut their throats. After a moment of silence, Sang speaks up, telling Yoon-seol that he can clearly see that he is ready, and since it has come to this, it is better if they begin. Ma-woon makes the first move and suddenly disappears from where he is sitting. Yoon-seol's Spider-Man senses kick into play, and he catches onto Ma-woon's attack, which is coming from behind. He is able to move away just in time to avoid Ma-woon's sickle weapon. Yoon-seol blocks the weapon, and this results in a clash, which leaves Ma-woon impressed. Yoon-seol then turns his attention to Sang, who is already coming toward him. Sang arms himself with 2 short staves, which are more than capable of blocking Yoon-seol's attack. The fight intensifies as Yoon-seol is pushed backwards by the two, forcing him to stay on the defensive. Nonetheless, they are impressed with the fact that Yoon-seol's speed is able to match theirs. Suddenly, Yoon-seol shows them what his speed can do by disappearing out of their sight and appearing behind them, while urging them to drop their weapons because there is no way they can defeat him. Sang smiles and tells Yoon-seol that it is left for them to see. The fight resumes, and Yoon-seol immediately notices a change in Sang's fighting pattern. Sang's approach makes the whole fight even messier for Yoon-seol, and it starts feeling as if Sang is wielding a staff. Sang proudly tells him that the technique that he is currently witnessing is the pride of his sect, the dog-beating staff technique. The moment Yoon-seol hears this, he recognizes the fact that it is a martial art of the Beggar's sect. At the same time, Ma-woon does him the honor of telling Yoon-seol that the technique he wields is his sect's sun-shooting sword technique. Yoon-seol also recognizes this as a technique proudly practiced by the Diankang sect. With this, Yoon-seol realizes that they were masters of one of the 9 sects that belong to the Orthodox Murim. As the fight continues, Yoon-seol realizes that they are making life difficult for him by using the combination of the 9 sects and the demonic sect's special weapons. Yoon-seol soon finds himself getting knocked by their overwhelming attack power, leaving him to ask himself the important question. He wonders if he is finally going to lose, but the answer he gives himself is a positive one. Yoon-seol refuses to go down just easily, and he plans to put all of the techniques and insights he has gained from battling martial artists from the Orthodox sect into play. As the two rush towards him, Yoon-seol calms down and reads their moves to get the pathway into overwhelming them. His plan comes to fruition, shocking the two down to their bones. Just as Unseol lunges into the air to make his last move, the two look with a smile and drop their weapons, giving Unseol the clear chance to deliver a fatal attack to cut them down. After the dust settles, Mawoon has completely died from the last attack, while Sang is still trying to hold on to life. With sadness in his voice, Unseol asks Sang why they didn't block or even try to dodge his last attack, and Sang reminds him that the outcome has already been predetermined. Sang mentions that secret agents whose identities have been revealed have no place to go back to, which is why he and Mawoon had to fight him, but they actually have no intention of killing him. Sang reveals that Mawoon had always compared Unseol to a stubborn younger brother they never had. Sang then tells Unseol that he has one final piece of advice for him. He informs him that the Murim Alliance and the Demon Palace are both paying attention to him, so he urges him to be careful. After saying this, Sang finally gives up the ghost and he crashes into the cold snow. Unseol stands there in horror, watching the whole situation unfold, and when he finally pulls himself together, he buries the two. Remembering Sang's words about secret agents not having a place to return to, he prays that they find somewhere to return to in the afterlife. Later on, Unseol returns to the Wandering Beast Pavilion and he reports to Dan, telling him that he has finished his work in the Salvation Squad. Dan commends him, telling him that he heard the news that his work in the Salvation Squad was incredible, but he would like him to explain everything that happened himself. Unseol lets Dan know that following the Demon Palace's order, he killed the Gong Demon duo. Dan asks for more, saying he is pretty sure that this was not all that happened. Unseol then pours out his heart, revealing that he spent about a year with the two, so he had grown feelings of trust to some extent. Unseol says he thought he had gotten rid of such unnecessary emotions for the mission, and seeing how troubled Unseol is, Dan cuts in, telling him to follow him. Dan leads him to a quiet place, and Unseol is still wondering why they are there when Dan tells him to pull out his sword. Unseol is shocked when he hears this, and Dan tells him that he just wants to check how much he has grown from his experience with the Salvation Squad. Unseol is taken aback that Dan is requesting a sudden duel, but at the same time, he believes that the Vice Master must have a reason for this. Unseol then reaches for his sword, saying he is going to make the first move. Unseol lunges towards Dan and knows that if he allows the fight to prolong, he will be the one at a clear disadvantage, which means he has to go all out from the beginning to end the battle as fast as he can. As he approaches Dan, Unseol hesitates because there is no opening for him to exploit whatsoever, and by the time Dan finally reacts to his attack, he makes a two-finger gesture before easily blocking Unseol's attack. Dan smiles while saying he is impressed that Unseol is able to use the squad leader's technique even though it is not as impressive. Unseol gets repelled backwards, shocking him because Dan did it so easily. Dan lunges toward Unseol with a scary attack, while telling him that his strategy to end the fight as fast as he can is actually impressive, and because he has such good insight, he is going to show him one move. Aura starts pouring out of Dan's body as he prepares to unleash the said move. The ground shakes visibly, and Dan tells Unseol to block the move with everything he has because failure to do so might result in his death. Dan reaches for his sword, and as he pulls it out of the sheath, it pulls in an immense aura from the air, creating a typhoon-like effect as Dan's eyes glow too, while Unseol trembles in anticipation.